Chapter 37-39. The next moment, the doubts in everyone's hearts were answered. In the deep pit where the monster had collapsed, a red figure suddenly appeared. The red-robed young lady had a devastatingly beautiful face, a pair of long and narrow eyes, as though the stars were ravaging. She was obviously dainty like a flower, but her cold and murderous aura made one's heart tremble, like a beautiful death god who had walked out from hell, like a poppy which made one suffocate, yet not daring to touch it. In that huge deep pit, the young lady's figure was extremely petite. When she leapt into the sky, a green light flashed and the green dragon spiraled, protecting the young lady in it. The green dragon scales glowed brilliantly, giving off an extremely cold and chilling aura. You only have this bit of ability. The girl's clear and cold voice carried an oppressive aura, mixed with a trace of obvious ridicule. When the crowd heard this, their hearts were in their throats. Did this lady know what she was saying? That monster was summoned by the people from the Palace of Darkness. She provoked the other party. If she angered that monster, what if it swallowed her in one mouthful? At this moment, in everyone's hearts, they had subconsciously placed their hopes on this young lady. They had totally forgotten. Not long ago, they were still suspecting her in every way. Perhaps it was because right now, everyone's hearts were already filled with despair. Only Yi-Ching Luo, this young lady, a newborn calf who wasn't afraid of the tiger, dared to hoot at the Palace of Darkness and had such a noble war pet. So they tried to find hope in the midst of despair. They subconsciously felt that, if they wanted to leave the auction alive, they could only rely on this young lady, called Yi-Ching Luo. And because of that, hearing Yi-Ching Luo's provocation, everyone was so nervous that they were suffocating. As expected, Yu Ji was provoked. His face was pale, one hand was still pressed on his chest, tightly holding onto his flesh, allowing the blood to flow on his palm. He smiled sinisterly at Yi-Ching Luo, laughing coldly. Yi-Ching Luo, your luck will not last forever. So what if you have the green dragon? You will absolutely not be able to defeat my blood fang, using my flesh and blood to construct the blood fang. Following Yu Ji's passionate low roar, the huge beast buried in the deep pit suddenly gave a loud roar. Immediately after, the ground began to shake violently. Beast slapped the ground hard. Its huge body instantly leaped out of the deep pit. A stream of black yin qi instantly wrapped around the wild beast. Yu Ji raised his head and stared at the wild beast. His hand, which was in his chest, went deeper into his chest. His face contorted in pain. However, the corner of his mouth was still hanging in a twisted arc. Blood fang, suck my heart's flesh and become stronger. Fresh blood stained Yu Ji's arm. Then, little by little, it dissipated on his skin. Yi-Ching Luo could clearly feel that the energy of the monster wrapped in yin qi had grown stronger. Damn it, a monster created from flesh and blood. As long as it continued to suck its master's blood, it would be able to recover and level up. You guessed correctly. Old Man Song explained, this kind of forbidden technique is extremely cruel. If there's even the slightest bit of carelessness, the person who digs out the blood from their own heart will die from excessive blood loss or from the wrong position. Once the master dies, the monster will also disappear. Yi-Ching Luo looked at Yu Ji. Then I'll just attack Yu Ji? Chapter 37-40. Damn it, did it need to be so difficult? Yi-Ching Luo's brows creased tightly as her lips pursed tightly. No matter what, killing this wild beast called Blood Fang was obviously an unrealistic thing. She could only think of a way to deal with Yu Ji. She gripped her glower flame fan tightly as her figure moved, nearing Yu Ji's direction. Yu Ji only sneered when he saw that. His gaze turned cold. Blood Fang, which was surrounded by black qi, turned into a bolt of lightning as it charged towards Yi-Ching Luo. That speed was even faster than Yi-Ching Luo by several times. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased as she quickened her footwork. The glower flame fan in her hand swiftly swept away the wind blades as it pressed towards Yuji. Azure Dragon, Twisted Bloodfang. Bloodfang was still able to find a gap to use his own body to block Yi Qing Luo's attack. Following that, he turned around and pounced towards Azure Dragon. This kind of dark, attributed wild beast will automatically block fatal attacks for the host. Old Man Song continued. So I said right from the start that it's very difficult to get past the dark, attributed wild beast and kill the host. Is there no other way? Yi Qing Luo asked. Old Man Song replied, no. Yi Qing Luo frowned as she didn't ask any more questions, but focused on finding a chance to attack Yuji. Yi Qing Luo's side was already in a battle. On the other side, the various powerhouses clenched their teeth as they started to join the battle between the black-robed men. At this moment, they could only choose to unite as one and fight with their backs against the wall. The terror of the opponent was something they had seen very clearly. If they didn't take advantage of the situation where Yi Qing Luo was suppressing that monster to finish off these small fries, when Yi Qing Luo couldn't hold on any longer, they would be in danger. Everyone started to fight, which made the executive elders heave a sigh of relief. Everyone started to join in the battle. Gue Wu, Zhou Mo, and Mao Mao joined in. The battle was much easier than before. Numerous attacks and dazzling, profound energy filled the sky. The surging, majestic energy was like surging waves as it surged continuously. Battle intent and killing intent intertwined in the air. But on the chaotic battlefield, there were two extremely abrupt presences, one red and one purple, two men with outstanding temperament, as though they were aloof from the world, stood in the middle of the battlefield without any intention to make a move. Unfortunately, the two men's temperament was so powerful that it suppressed everyone from the secluded palace. It didn't matter if it was the people from the major forces or the palace of darkness. They would consciously avoid the two of them, not daring to get close to them. The biggest similarity between the two of them was, from the beginning until the end, his gaze had never left the young girl who was fighting Yuji and Shueya. It was as if, in his eyes, even in the entire world, there was only this girl. The dark light that filled the sky was sharp and murderous. The young girl moved quickly among the wild beasts. Her coordination with the Azure Dragon was reflected in the eyes of the two men. At this moment, suddenly the beast roared. From his wide-open mouth, he spat out another ball of sticky stuff. When the sticky giant thing landed on the ground, it was covered in blood. It also let out a roar similar to blood fangs. This sudden change made Yi Qing Luo stunned. The stench in the air was getting stronger and stronger. The stench was like the stench of a corpse that had been rotting for many years, and it also carried a thick stench of blood. Apart from the size of the beasts, they were almost identical in appearance. Yi Qing Luo was cursing in her heart. How could he give birth from his mouth? And it gave birth so quickly. Opening his mouth and spitting out, he gave birth to a monster that looked exactly the same. One wild beast was already hard to deal with, and now there was a second one. Illusory wild beasts were willful, right? Chapter 3741. Oh my God, that monster actually gave birth to a new monster. What's going on? Is that an illusion? Are we really going to die here? Everyone opened their eyes wide in disbelief after seeing Beast's godly performance, the confidence and fighting spirit that they had worked so hard to nurture. All of them were badly hurt. One monster was enough to wipe them out, not to mention the addition of another one. This was not giving them a chance to live. Cough, cough. The Palace of Darkness said that as long as you join us, you can leave this place alive. While everyone was panicking, a voice panting heavily sounded, enunciating every word. Xiao Yulu walked out from the corner. She was still holding on to the wall, her face pale. Her white dress was stained red with blood. Her body was still trembling slightly. Obviously, her injuries were not light. She could walk out now. She had already used up all of her strength. Xiao Yulu gritted her teeth and endured the pain. She stared at the people on the battlefield with her dark eyes and spoke again. Join the Palace of Darkness. You have also seen the strength of the Dark Nether Palace. Their strength will let us see real hope. After she said this, she coughed hard. Mouthfuls of blood gushed out. Without embroiling city's fairy? Princess Yulu. Everyone was attracted by Xiao Yulu's voice and looked at her. After hearing Xiao Yulu's words, their expressions were no longer as resistant as before. Instead, they loosened up. After seeing the power of the Palace of Darkness, those who wanted to live would naturally no longer resist. Looking at the huge beast, the ground full of blood and corpses, everyone's hearts started to waver. With Xiao Yulu's help, Yu Ji seized the chance and said, "That's right. As long as you join the Palace of Darkness and become its disciples, I will guarantee your safety." I will join. Me too. Is what you're saying true? As long as we join, we can leave the auction? Then I will join too. More and more profound practitioners, driven by fear, chose to join the Palace of Darkness. There were also some who wanted to make a decision after leaving the auction. But such little cleverness. How could the gloomy palace, which had always played dirty, not be on guard? As the profound practitioners who joined the Nether Palace walked towards the black-robed man according to Yu Ji's request, a ray of black light scattered across the sky like a fairy scattering flowers. Strings of black light flowed into the bodies of the various profound practitioners. The expressions of all the profound practitioners changed greatly, and they immediately covered their chests as they questioned in panic. Yu Ji's face was pale. Because one of his hands was still stuck in his chest, he looked extremely sinister and terrifying. He coldly swept his gaze across the panicking profound practitioners in front of him and sneered. This is the mark of Dark Ghost Palace. After becoming a disciple of Dark Ghost Palace, you can only be loyal to Dark Ghost Palace. If you do anything that goes against Dark Ghost Palace's mark, will devour your flesh and soul. WH what? What kind of bullsh asterisk T mark is that? Aren't you making things difficult for me? I don't want this kind of mark. Quickly expel it from my body. Chapter 3742. Someone shouted, "Don't try to scare me. I don't believe in this. Using such a method to force me. I don't want to do it anymore." The man cursed as he turned around and walked towards the direction of the major forces. However, before he took a few steps, suddenly that person stopped. Then he let out an extremely tragic cry. That person turned into a mist of blood in front of everyone's eyes. The most shocking thing was, within the blood mist, there was a ball of black flowing light. The flowing light flickered. The blood mist gathered towards the flowing light. Then it returned to Yu Ji's hand. This scene stunned those profounders who were clamoring. They pressed their chests. Their faces were filled with fear and unease. The thing that entered their bodies was like a timed attack device. It was very likely that they would all be devoured in the next instant. How would they dare to act rashly? Is there anyone else who wants to leave? Yu Ji sneered when he saw that he had successfully intimidated everyone with this move of killing the chicken to warn the monkeys. All the profound practitioners' faces were pale and filled with fear. No one dared to clamor anymore. However, this caused those profound practitioners who were planning to join the Nether Palace to start hesitating again. What are you hesitating for? There's nothing to hesitate about. Xiao Yulu tried to persuade them again. However, after saying this, she seemed to have lost all her strength. Her body went limp and she sat on the ground against the wall. Her blood stained the ground. She held on and continued, "As long as you don't have any thoughts of betraying the Palace of Darkness, So what if this imprint is in your bodies? I feel that this will not affect you. Everyone turned to look at Xiao Yulu at the same time. They seemed to be struggling with Xiao Yulu's words. Yu Ji threw a look at Pharaoh He. Pharaoh He's eyes flashed slightly, but he did not say anything and flew towards Xiao Yulu. Pharaoh Crane landed behind Xiao Yulu, and with an indifferent expression, he took out a medicine bottle that was suffused with black gas from his spatial pocket. He poured out a medicinal pill and threw it at Xiao Yulu's feet. His voice was cold and aloof. This is a medicinal pill given to you by the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. After consuming it, your injuries will be healed. His arrogant attitude made Xiao Yulu frown. However, her fatigue and injuries had worsened, and she no longer had the strength to argue with the Pharaoh Crane. As a matter of fact, Pharaoh He threw the pill to her. In her heart, she did not want to eat it. However, when he thought of what had happened to the people from the Palace of Darkness, he felt that it was a pity. She still took a deep breath, raised her hand forcefully, and groped for the pills by her feet. His fingertips clenched the pill that was covered in blood and dust. She closed her eyes and swallowed the pill. Pharaoh He glanced coldly at Xiao Yulu before looking at the profound practitioners from the various forces. As long as you join the Palace of Tenebrous Shadow and remain loyal to it, you will definitely be rewarded handsomely. What the Dark Nether Palace doesn't lack are all kinds of secret skills and precious elixirs. As he spoke, Xiao Yulu, who had been on the verge of death, quickly stood up after swallowing a medicinal pill. She looked at her own body in surprise. His face was no longer pale from his severe injuries. His eyes were filled with vigor. Thank you, Palace of Gloomy Darkness. I swear to follow the Palace of Darkness to my death. Xiao Yulu was wild with joy as she said to Pharaoh He. Pharaoh He snorted coldly, then leaped and returned to the group of black-robed men. The speed of Xiao Yulu's recovery left all the profound practitioners speechless. They heard Pharaoh He's words again. Chapter 3743. Those cultivators who stood at a high position wanted to raise their profound grade the most, to become even stronger. Profound grade, ability, was the only standard to determine their position. The strong were respected. Only by becoming stronger would they be able to stand firm and live for a longer period of time. The conditions proposed by the Palace of Gloomy Darkness were indeed tempting to everyone. Everyone had witnessed Palace of Darkness ability with their own eyes, and there was no way to deny Palace of Darkness's power and various shocking secret arts. What they could learn. For example, to summon the white dragon monster earlier. For example, to be like these black-robed men, to be able to use it to become immortal, invulnerable, and impervious to fire and water. For example, to learn the secret art of creating wild beasts with flesh and blood. For example, to obtain the medicinal pills which Xiao Yulu had swallowed earlier. Consuming one pill, even if one was on the verge of death, he would be rejuvenated. For example, wait a minute, there were many other benefits. In comparison, joining Palace of Darkness didn't seem to be a loss at all. Birds chose a good tree to nest in. People walked towards higher ground. This had nothing to do with betraying the original family or the original powerhouse. At this moment, there were even more cultivators who abandoned their own powerhouses and joined Palace of Darkness. When Xiao Yulu saw this scene, a sinister smile appeared in her eyes. Yu Ji sneered as his lips twitched. As he looked at Yi Qing Luo complacently, see, this is the human heart. This bunch of trash's ability originally can't be compared to my dead corpse army. Now, you don't have the advantage in terms of numbers. He staggered backwards a few steps. Blood flowed down his arm and speedily dissipated in the direction of those two enormous monsters. His malevolent expression was as he laughed coldly. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows were tightly knitted into a bundle. Yi Qing Luo could understand each cultivator's choice. She couldn't say that they were wrong, but she couldn't agree with their actions. Once one was branded with the word traitor, to a person's life, this was a term which could never be washed away, no matter which powerhouse it was. Betraying the first time, they would definitely betray the second time. This kind of people were not trustworthy and not worth to be friends with. Yi Qing Luo was very clear on the reason why Qiao Yilu supported her dispirited body to persuade everyone. Qiao Yilu was the first person to join Palace of Darkness. If she didn't persuade more people to join, her reputation would be completely ruined. Now he had persuaded so many profound practitioners from the various major powers to join him. If he said it out loud, it was just for the sake of survival and to become stronger. To put it bluntly, she was just finding a few scapegoats to protect her good reputation. Those cultivators who joined the Nether Palace. Yi Qing Luo didn't want to waste her breath to feed them any chicken soup. In any case, they would eventually regret their choice today. Yi Qing Luo's attention was focused on the two gigantic wild beasts in front of her. From time to time, he would attack and harass the Azure Dragon. Facing two different sized wild beasts with similar strength, Yi Qing Luo was getting more and more strenuous. She just couldn't show it. If her aura was slightly weaker, the morale of their side would weaken as a result. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness would have a chance. The two sides were still fighting. The executive elders were still shouting loudly to boost morale, but it still couldn't stop them. More and more profound practitioners surged towards the Palace of Darkness. Yi Qing Luo's side gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. The morale of the struggling crowd plummeted, and they no longer had any desire to fight. The reason why he insisted on standing here. Chapter 3744. The sky was dyed red by the dark clouds that were shrouded in blood. More and more profound practitioners fell to the ground. Just a moment ago, they were comrades. The next moment, he became an enemy, and he even died at the hands of the other party. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased tightly when she saw this. If he didn't do something to boost the morale of the soldiers, then he would definitely die. This group of profounders were simply waiting for death. She glanced at the two blood fangs that surrounded her, and her eyes flickered slightly. Azure Dragon. The Azure Dragon let out a low roar. Immediately after, Yi Qing Luo's 5 fingers moved, and the glower-flamed fan suddenly surged, drawing out a strong airflow, chopping down towards the two blood fangs. Meanwhile, Yi Qing Luo leapt up and flipped onto the green dragon's back. The Azure Dragon's huge tail suddenly flipped. Heavy waves of qi crisscrossed the sky. A berserk power that seemed capable of destroying heaven and earth slammed against the ground like raging waves. The entire battlefield was covered in rubble. In this chaos, Yi Qing Luo called out to Shiju, who was battling with Li Mao and the others in her heart. Her body suddenly fell down. Shiju's massive body caught her firmly. Then it quickly flew towards where Pharaoh Crane and Qiao Yilu were standing. Yu Ji, who was protected by 2 blood fangs, couldn't move. But Pharaoh Crane and Qiao Yilu, these two scum, it shouldn't be a problem to solve it. Yi Qing Luo expressed that she, a person who had not even reached the standard to ascend to the Earth Realm, in order to motivate a group of Earth Realm cultivators, she was willing to give it her all. If this group of profound practitioners were still so weak, could she choose to become evil and kill them with her own hands? Yi Qing Luo's actions were extremely swift, and in a blink of an eye, she had already dashed in front of Qiao Yilu. Perhaps Qiao Yilu thought that those 2 wild beasts were enough to trap Yi Qing Luo. He didn't even have time to react. Immediately after, a red figure flashed past. Her neck was lifted by a slender and fair hand. Qiao Yilu's eyes narrowed. She had just escaped from death. He hadn't even had the chance to enjoy the feeling of being alive again. Death had found her here. Qiao Yilu's face contorted in pain, but she could not struggle, because the moment Yi Qing Luo locked her neck tightly, he commanded Shiju to soar into the sky. Xiao Yilu was grabbed by the neck by Yi Qing Luo, hanging in midair for a parade. Yi Qing Luo! Pharaoh Crane exclaimed in disbelief as he looked at Xiao Yilu, who was suspended in the sky. He cried out in alarm. This caused the profounders of the various powers to look over. Wasn't she killed by those two monsters? How, this girl is too strong. She actually broke through the defense of those two monsters. Look, the Empyrean Ferry of Without Embroiling City is suspended in midair. The people of the major forces were all shocked and flabbergasted. That gigantic beast could wipe them out with just one. When Yi Qing Luo was facing the two gigantic wild beasts, not only was she able to handle it with ease, she was even able to break through their defenses and attack Xiao Yilu when she was unprepared. Everyone looked at the gigantic black panther galloping in the sky, as well as the red-clothed girl on its back. His eyes lit up. Then, what shocked everyone the most was that the girl on the black panther did not stop because of this. Her eyes were deep and serene. Her slender fingers gripped the glower flame fan tightly as she flipped it. The surging bright red glow turned into densely packed light rays as it was released. That light rays made one's eyes feel a faint piercing pain. Pharaoh Crane frowned as an ominous premonition arose in his heart. He stared at that light for a moment and swiftly retreated to the side. Chapter 37:45. The next moment, under the densely packed red rays of light, Qin Xiaolian's eyes widened. No one had noticed that under the bright red light, there was a hint of silver lining. By the time Pharaoh sensed the chill, it was already too late. The hidden silver threads under the glower flame fan had already wrapped around Pharaoh. Following that, Yi Qing Luo hooked her finger. The glower flame fan closed. Numerous silver threads lifted Pharaoh's body up. His body was tied up, hanging horizontally in midair. Ah! Pharaoh cried out miserably. His four limbs kept struggling in midair. The icy cold silver threads were like sharp blades, sticking close to his skin, his flesh. Faintly, there was a piercing pain. He could even feel a thick liquid spilling out from his body. Those silver threads were not ordinary silver threads. When Pharaoh Crane realized this, his entire body froze. Palace of Darkness, you're just a rat hiding in the dark. How dare you speak such bullshit in front of all the famous sects? The young lady's cold laughter echoed throughout the entire auction. Her tone was filled with ridicule. Since the two of you beautified Palace of Darkness so well, then, do you think that before you die, you'll be able to see the people from Palace of Darkness save you? Pharaoh and Xiao Yilu's eyes widened in terror, but they had no strength to move. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled as her gaze looked downwards, at those cultivators who had lost all their battle intent. Do you really understand what is a strong cultivator? A real strong cultivator, will they escape from danger? A real strong cultivator, will they seek for shortcuts to improve themselves? A real strong cultivator, in front of the battlefield, will they doubt their own ability to wear down their battle intent? After a few rounds of questioning, Yi Qing Luo's voice became sharper. Following that, she gave a cold laugh, revealing some traces of ridicule. The strong cultivator that I think is born from adversity and tempering through battles. Facing an opponent who is stronger than you, even more powerful, shouldn't be fear, but your battle intent is ignited to improve yourself to the extent where you are able to battle with the opponent. After Yi Qing Luo finished her sentence, she threw Xiao Yilu, who was in her hands, fiercely towards a direction. If you keep using the mentality of a weakling to face everything, you will be like these trash, waiting to be trampled upon. The feeling of weightlessness caused Xiao Yilu to scream. The fear of falling from such a great height eroded her heart. This fall did not have the assistance of any profound qi. She would definitely be smashed into minced meat. Oh! Pharaoh Crane let out a painful groan. The silver threads wrapped around him, causing his body to spin like a spiral. Just a moment ago, the two people from Gloom Palace were still stirring up the people's hearts. In the next instant, he was in such a sorry state. Coupled with Yi Qing Luo's words, everyone felt ashamed and embarrassed. He had lived for more than half of his life, but he was still not as clear as a girl. Everyone was still a little afraid. However, his confidence was greatly boosted. Ah! Qiao Yilu's ear-piercing scream pierced through the sky. Those screams made one's head hurt. Her body was caught firmly by someone. She was nestled in that person's arms, screaming to vent the fear and pain in her heart. The person who was hugging her frowned tightly, as his expression was impatient. When he opened his mouth, his voice was chilly. Scream again, and I'll throw you out. Qiao Yilu was so frightened that she was shivering. Hearing that voice, her tightly shut eyes immediately opened, as her eyes stared intently at the person who was hugging her. When she saw that person's face clearly. Chapter 3746. The person who caught Qiao Yilu was none other than Qiao Yinyan. The direction in which Yi Qing Luo threw the man was in the direction of Qiao Yinyan. After all, Qiao Yilu was Qiao Yinyan's younger sister. She was the biological daughter of Patriarch Qiao. Yi Qing Luo naturally couldn't really take action to claim Qiao Yilu's life. Of course, this was under the premise that her life was not in danger. When she had first arrived in the Earth domain, Qiao Yinyan had always been the one helping her. He had never asked her for anything in return. If she really killed Qiao Yilu, it would be a miracle. How could she face Qiao Yinyan in the future, even if Qiao Yinyan didn't care about his younger sister? However, kinship and blood ties still existed. This was an indelible fact. How was Qiao Yilu's solution? Qiao Yinyan would be the only one to make the decision. Yi Qing Luo withdrew her vision and didn't pay any more attention to Qiao Yinyan and Qiao Yilu's situation. Instead, he moved his fingers and tightened the silver thread in his hand. Then he swept up the pharaoh crane and threw him in the direction of the two enormous beasts. Yi Qing Luo, Azure Dragon, and Shi Ju worked together to grab hold of the opportunity to reverse the current situation, which seemed to have taken a very long time. In reality, it was less than the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. The Azure Dragon, who was facing two gigantic beasts, was slowly falling into a disadvantageous position, not to mention the Green Dragon's power because of the contract with Yi Qing Luo, or because the Earth realm would be suppressed by the realm's balance. For example, this land was also a restriction for Azure Dragon. The auction venue was extremely vast, but there was a large group of profounders and a large group of black-robed people. Most importantly, these two blood fang monsters were too huge, the size of the Azure Dragon and the size of the two blood fangs. The space for battle was not too big. Moreover, Azure Dragon was different from Blood Fang. The Azure Dragon had to take into consideration that the cultivators of the major forces would not be harmed. As for Blood Fang, he didn't care. He didn't differentiate between friend and foe. As long as he could attack, he would attack without hesitation. The more apprehensions there were, naturally, their combat power would be affected. After Yi Qing Luo had roused the hearts of the people, he immediately used Pharaoh He to force Blood Fang's entanglement on the Azure Dragon. Ah! Pharaoh He's terrified scream pierced through the horizon. His body was directly thrown into the overbearing profound energy, which was like a sharp blade's force. Ah! Even more miserable screams rang out. Just as Pharaoh Crane was thrown over, Blood Fang opened his mouth and bit him. He didn't even chew it before swallowing it into his stomach. He took advantage of Shuiya's momentary distraction. Yi Qing Luo and Azure Dragon's vision met. His fingers gripping the glowing flame, fan tightened. She displayed her footwork and violent dark force, surged out. She was as fast as lightning. Under the cover of the Green Dragon, she flew towards Yuji. Profound energy encircled his fingertips. vast and majestic profound energy, surged and roared as it attacked secluded silence. Even the air began to explode with a tremor. The air waves rippled out like ripples, just as Yi Qing Luo's attack was about to claim Yu Ji's life. Suddenly, Yi Qing Luo felt a chill down her spine as an indescribable sense of fear assaulted her body and mind. Her heart trembled. The momentum of the attack quickly slowed down. Immediately after, his body instinctively made a dodging movement. Her reaction speed was fast, very fast, but she could still feel a sharp and majestic energy, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws towards her. Just sensing this energy, Yi Qing Luo felt as though her skin was being sliced open by something, and it was extremely painful. What kind of powerful energy was this? Chapter 3747. Yi Qing Luo didn't know how to describe this feeling. She didn't see anyone, just a slight sense, which made her hair stand up as she was extremely vigilant. Only, she was very alert and her reaction was extremely fast, but she was still one step too slow. At the instant when she retreated, the palm wind which brushed past her seemed as though it was going to tear her apart. The surging profound energy instantly swallowed her. The qi wave surged as though it was a huge wave. Yi Qing Luo's face turned pale instantly. Her heart sunk fiercely. The aura of death was spreading around her. Her profound energy exploded as she increased her speed in an attempt to avoid that attack. Even if she couldn't avoid it, she absolutely couldn't die so easily, just as Yi Qing Luo clenched her teeth, about to bear the heart-wrenching pain from that energy. Suddenly, she felt a tight grip on her waist. His body was pushed back by a strong and powerful arm, and he fell into a wide embrace. A man's elegant sandalwood scent entered her nostrils. It instantly dispersed the young lady's blood stench. Yi Qing Luo was still in a daze as she fell into the man's embrace, and when her forehead knocked against the man's chest, she finally reacted from the pain. "Ah, Xian!" Yi Qing Luo called out the man's name. The man hugged her with one hand as he raised the other. The wide purple sleeves under the strong qi were like purple clouds rolling and floating. A gust of thick black qi, which could be seen with the naked eye, swept up the raging wind as it contended against Dmo Xian's raised sleeves. Yi Qing Luo raised her head as she looked at Dmo Xian worriedly. "Ah, Xian, your body." "No problem." Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as his eyes were filled with tenderness as he smiled and shook his head. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly. Where did this sudden and powerful strength come from? Was it another strong helper from the secluded palace? She pursed her lips even tighter, just as she was about to ask Dmo Xian to be careful. An icy cold voice suddenly rang. "Yi Qing Luo, the person who saved you is not only him, there's me too." Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she immediately looked towards the direction of the voice. She then saw a tall figure in that thick black qi, faintly discernible. One could faintly see that blazing red robe sweeping past. As he spoke, the clouds of black qi gradually dispersed in all directions. The man's cold and handsome face was revealed, causing one's heart to palpitate. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips. Chu Wu Xan. Dmo Xian and Zhu Wu Xian, one in front and one behind, blocked that thick black qi, the majestic and powerful profound energy, and the air ripples that spread out in the air. They were all blocked by these two people. The dense black gas slowly dissipated and vanished into nothingness. Unexpectedly, Zhu Wuxin had also helped her. A low pressure floated down from the top of his head. Yi Qing Luo immediately retracted her vision from Zhu Wu Xan as she coughed lightly. "Zhu Wu Xan." Thank you." "I don't need young Master Zhu's help, and Luo doesn't need to thank you." Dmo Xian's voice interrupted Yi Qing Luo. He intentionally made a declaration as he hugged Yi Qingluo's petite body tightly. Chu Wuxian was expressionless. I did it for Yi Qingluo. She has her own self. There's no need for you to worry. Mo Xian replied coldly. Zhu Wuxian continued to be expressionless. Yi Qingluo is my future wife. Of course I will worry. Mo Xian's face turned black. If it wasn't for the fact that the occasion wasn't right. Chapter 37:48. To say that his little Luo was his future wife in front of him. Haha. She could feel the fluctuating emotions of the man. Yi Qingluo immediately placed her little hand on Mo Xian's chest as she comforted him. Ah, Xian, it's a fact that he extended his hand to save me. So naturally I should thank him. Otherwise, wouldn't others think that I, Yi Qingluo, am an ungrateful person? She deliberately emphasized the word others. Mo Xian naturally understood Yi Qingluo's hint. His brows rose as his peach blossom eyes squinted, hugging Yi Qingluo's petite body tightly as he looked at Zhu Wuxian complacently. What lil Luo? I said is right. After all, he's an outsider. An outsider helped you, so it's only right for you to thank him. He was thankful because the other party was an outsider. Those who truly treated him as their family would not care about anything, whether it was a favor or not. Yi Qingluo's words pleased Mo Xian. His anger from Zhu Wuxin's words also calmed down. Chu Wuxin's face was expressionless. No one could tell what he was thinking. But Yi Qingluo could sense that Zhu Wuxian's surrounding icy cold aura had increased by several notches. She knew that her words might hurt Zhu Wuxin. However, she still had to clearly put some distance between the two of them. She smiled at Zhu Wuxin. Thank you, Zhu Wuxin. Zhu Wuxin did not speak, nor did he respond. He only used that pair of calm and indifferent eyes to stare straight at her. There was not the slightest change of emotion in his eyes. This gaze made Yi Qingluo's hair stand on end. Just at this moment, Yu Ji's angry voice broke the silence. Castle Master of Death God Castle. You, what do you mean by this? Unknowingly, Yu Ji was sitting on Bloodfang's head. In front of the huge beast, he was like an ant. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to find where he was. Since we have decided not to cooperate with the Palace of Darkness, then I hope that the Castle Lord of Death God Castle will not interfere with all the plans of the Palace of Darkness. Yu Ji gritted his teeth as he spoke. Clearly, he had long held a grudge against Zhu Wuxin. Zhu Wuxian glanced at Yu Ji indifferently and ignored him. However, from the corner of his eyes, he caught a glimpse of the two people hugging each other. A dim light flashed in the depths of Chu Wuxin's eyes. He opened his mouth, and his voice was as cold as ice. The reason why we don't cooperate with the Palace of Seclusion is because your plan is to hurt Yi Qingluo. The reason I interfered was because you guys touched her. His words were so straightforward and direct. It was like a passionate confession, expressing his feelings. He had to admit it. This kind of words could really move a girl's heart. However, other than looking like a cute girl in front of Mo Xian, Yi Qingluo didn't have the so-called maiden's heart. This was the second time Yi Qingluo had heard of Zhu Wuxian giving up on the collaboration with the Palace of Seclusion. It was just that this time it came from Zhu Wuxin's own mouth. She didn't have that kind of feeling between a man and a woman. However, he was truly grateful. For her, he gave up his goal. This made Yi Qingluo grateful and touched, but also a little awkward. She did not think that there was a relationship between her and Zhu Wuxin. She could make Zhu Wuxin sacrifice for her. That was the goal he had worked so hard for. For a moment, she did not know how she should face Zhu Wuxin. Ha! He. Suddenly, Yu Ji laughed crazily. Chapter 37:49. Shut up! Zhu Wuxian's expression suddenly turned cold. His chilly eyes were filled with a piece of solemnity. Yu Ji laughed loudly. Why? Afraid that I will expose you in front of Yi Qingluo and spoil your image in her heart? You're looking for death. Zhu Wuxian's eyes were filled with murderous intent as his tyrannical, profound energy was like a wave crashing towards Yu Ji. Blood Fang leapt up and raised his claws to block Zhu Wuxian's attack. Bam! Blood Fang's huge body flew out heavily as it crashed onto the ground. A wave of earth quaked and mountains swayed. Zhu Wuxian flew up as his red robe flashed past, leaving behind an afterimage as he stepped on Blood Fang's body and flew towards Yu Ji. Just as Zhu Wuxian was about to move, a chilly voice rang, "Wait." The young lady's voice successfully made Zhu Wuxian, who was in midair, stop his actions. He floated in midair as he turned his head sideways to look at the young lady. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly as she raised her eyes and met Zhu Wuxian's eyes. Following that, she opened her mouth to ask, "What did Yu Ji mean by that?" "Nothing much," Zhu Wuxian replied indifferently. Even though they were separated by a distance, Yi Qing Luo could still feel that after she asked this question, the chill on Zhu Wuxian's body became even more intense. Yu Ji, who was hiding on the other Blood Fang's back, was filled with cold sweat after he escaped death. He clutched at his chest and panted heavily, but he couldn't stop laughing. Of course, he doesn't want to tell you. Ha ha ha. Not so long ago, the high and mighty young Master Chu would actually do something for a woman, and a woman who's already someone else's wife. Ha ha ha, what a joke, what a joke! Yu Ji. Zhu Wuxian's icy cold voice stopped Yu Ji as his chilly eyes stared deadly at Yu Ji. Yi Qing Luo frowned as her little hand patted Dmo Xian's hand, which was placed on her waist. After Dmo Xian let go of her, she leapt up and faced Zhu Wuxian. "What he said is related to me, so I have the right to know what happened." The two of them stood face to face. The icy cold flame encircled the two of them. The raging hurricane was also surging around the two of them, but it didn't come near them. Zhu Wuxin did not speak. There seemed to be a storm gathering on his expressionless face. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips and shifted her gaze towards Yu Ji. "What did you say earlier? Say it again." Perhaps he wanted to sow discord between her and Zhu Wuxin. Perhaps he was already dissatisfied with Zhu Wuxin's coldness and wanted to make Zhu Wuxin suffer. When Yi Qing Luo asked secluded silence, Yu Ji answered without hesitation, "You didn't hear wrongly. The moment you arrived in the Earth Realm, you were separated from Di Zun and the others. It wasn't an accident, nor was it because of the turbulence in the passageway leading to the upper realm. It was all planned by young Master Zhu." After Yu Ji said this, he immediately looked at Zhu Wuxin, afraid that Zhu Wuxin would be angered by this. However, he saw Zhu Wuxin standing there silently. Wisps of black hair covered half of Zhu Wuxin's face. His emotions were also concealed within. When Yu Ji saw that Zhu Wuxin didn't have any reaction, he didn't even try to defend himself. Instantly, as though he had caught hold of Zhu Wuxin's weakness, he sneered as he continued. "In order to get you, he resorted to unscrupulous means. Yi Qing Luo, do you feel that the image of him in your heart has been destroyed? That man totally isn't like what he showed." Yu Ji slandered Zhu Wuxin without any limits. Chapter 3750. It was probably because Zhu Wuxian was worried about Yi Qing Luo and didn't dare to make a move. Yu Ji vented out all the unhappiness towards Zhu Wuxian, which he had suppressed in his heart. He laughed loudly as he stared at Yi Qing Luo's face without blinking, attempting to see the embarrassment and anger on Yi Qing Luo's face. He wanted to see Yi Qing Luo making a move on Zhu Wuxian in a rage. The best was for both of them to suffer. Then he would be able to reap the benefits from the third party. But Yu Ji stared at Yi Qing Luo for quite some time. The most nasty, slanderous words were said. Yi Qing Luo's gorgeous face didn't have any change in expression from the start to the end. Calm, exactly the same as Zhu Wuxian's expressionless face. Yu Ji's heart shuddered as his throat tightened, unable to spit out a single word. After he stopped talking, Yi Qingluo, who had not moved for a long time, slowly raised her slender brows. You keep saying that it's all Zhu Wu Xian's plan. Then please answer a question of mine. Yu Ji's pupils contracted as he stared intently at her. Yi Qingluo's lips curled as she spoke word by word. If I didn't remember wrongly, that strong suction force in the passageway space was filled with sinister, murderous intent. I don't believe that Zhu Wu Xian would have that kind of murderous intent towards me. Yu Ji's expression congealed. Yi Qingluo noticed the change in his emotions as she laughed. Before you fabricate a lie, make a draft first so that it's full of loopholes and no one will believe it. What I said is all true. After you reached the Earth Realm, you were brought to Without Embroiling City by him. Yu Ji saw that Yi Qingluo didn't believe him and instantly panicked. After you came to Without Embroiling City, in order to let you stay by his side, you were unconscious for half a month. Don't you know? Yi Qingluo's pupils had some changes. Previously, she found out from DMO Xian that her memories, when she reached the Earth Realm, were indeed very messy. Before she regained consciousness from her memories, she had no memory of the past half a month. Even Old Man Song's memory was blank. This was because of Zhu Wu Xian. Yu Ji saw that Yi Qingluo wasn't speaking for a long time, and he took a look at Zhu Wu Xian, who was still silent with his head lowered as his heart was suddenly lifted up. He gripped Blood Fong's thick hair tightly to ease the fear in his heart. He gritted his teeth and said, I admit it. When you were in the tunnel, the suction force you felt was indeed the work of the Palace of Darkness. However, after that, it was Zhu Wuxin who snatched you from the hands of the Venerable One and betrayed his cooperation with the Venerable One. His gaze shot towards DMO Xian, who was not too far away, and immediately returned back to Yi Qingluo. For his own selfish desires, he separated you from the Overlord and made you unconscious for an entire half a month, and even intentionally erased your memories. It's obvious that he's harboring evil intentions. In that half a month, even if he did anything to you, I'm afraid you wouldn't know. He deliberately used an extremely ambiguous tone and gaze to mock her. These words caused Zhu Wu Xian, who had been silent the entire time, to suddenly raise his head. His cold gaze locked onto Yu Ji. Yu Ji was so scared that he almost fell off Bloodtitha's head. But Zhu Wu Xian's gaze quickly returned back to Yi Qingluo. His cold face creased into a bundle. His slightly chilly eyes stared at Yi Qingluo, wanting to say something several times. But when the words were at the tip of his tongue, he swallowed them back. Chapter 37:51. Why aren't you panicking? Why don't you blame Zhu Wuxin? During that half a month, he made you betray Venerable Sovereign. How can you still be so calm? Yu Ji didn't understand why Yi Qingluo was still putting on a calm and indifferent look. Wouldn't ordinary women fly into a rage out of humiliation when they hear such words that tarnish their reputations? Moreover, even a passerby like him knew how jealous Dizun was. Why didn't Venerable Sovereigns start a war with Zhu Wuxin out of anger? All of this was completely different from what he had planned. Hearing the urgency in Yu Ji's tone, Yi Qingluo merely smiled calmly. I don't understand Zhu Wu Xian, but the only thing I can confirm is Zhu Wu Xian isn't that kind of person. She looked at Zhu Wuxin. He also caught the flash of panic in Zhu Wuxin's eyes. She curled her lips and smiled. I am indeed very angry that you trapped me for half a month and erased my memory. But as for the other things, I believe you won't do them. If I really did it, what would you do? Zhu Wuxin countered with a question, his eyes full of seriousness. Yi Qingluo smiled as she shook her head. You won't. Zhu Wuxin was not someone who would take advantage of others when they were down. If Zhu Wuxin was really that kind of person, he had many opportunities to forcefully take her away and engage in a torturous drama. However, Zhu Wuxin had never done so. He is only paranoid that she is his person. other than stubbornly wanting to abide by the agreement from many years ago. He would never purposely cause her any trouble. Details tell a person's heart, even if he did not understand Zhu Wuxin's character. Yi Qingluo was certain that Zhu Wuexan absolutely would not do anything to her. As for the disillusionment you mentioned before, I can only tell you that it doesn't exist. Yi Qingluo looked at Yu Ji smilingly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. As for him using unscrupulous means for me, this can only mean that my charm is very big. Yu Ji trembled as he pointed at Yi Qingluo, his face filled with disbelief. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Who would have thought that he would shout at the top of his voice and slander Zhu Wuxin? But it was totally unable to incite disharmony between Yi Qingluo and Zhu Wuxian's relationship. Instead, he had completely offended Zhu Wuxin. No, it was not just Zhu Wuxian, and he had also offended that venerable sovereign with a sea of jealousy. If Di Zun and Chu Wuxin made a move, he had no way out. Trash. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind Yu Ji. When Yu Ji heard this voice, his entire body stiffened and he straightened his body. This voice made Yi Qingluo and the others' expressions congealed as their bodies tensed up. His body had instinctively entered a defensive state. It was that feeling again. It was a feeling of fear that made one's heart tremble. It was the powerful force that had almost taken her life. Yi Qingluo's breathing instantly congealed as her body seemed to have a heavy pressure pressing down on her. At this moment, she felt a broad embrace behind her. The moment the pressure hit him, the elegant sandalwood fragrance had already dispelled all the negative effects. She arched herself into Dmo Xian's arms, and her little hand clutched his robes as she lowered her voice. "Ah, Xian, it's that energy earlier." Dmo Xian's expression was also grave as he raised his eyes to look at Yu Ji's direction. Behind Yu Ji, a black figure flew over like a ghost. Chapter 3752. What made Yi Qingluo most astonished was that man looked extremely young. At most, he looked around 24 or 25 years old. Just 24 or 25 years old, and his ability was already so powerful. That man. Who on earth was he? Young lord. When Yu Ji saw that man, he started to tremble uncontrollably. He didn't even bother about the hand which was inserted into his chest as he knelt down on the ground and kowtowed with all his might. When his hand stretched out from the hole in his chest, immediately large amounts of blood started to gush out. The blood was like a blood fountain as it seeped out countless amounts of blood. Yu Ji could feel the blood flowing out from his body rapidly. The feeling of losing too much blood made him dizzy. But he didn't dare to move. Totally didn't dare to move. He could only allow the blood to flow out from his body, allowing the two blood fangs to suck the blood that seeped out from his body. Trash! That man stepped on the air like that, strolling leisurely as though he was in his own backyard. He stepped on the air as he walked step by step to Yu Ji's side. From the side, his cold and treacherous gaze was like a poisonous snake, coiling around Yu Ji. Yu Ji's body trembled even more as he stammered. Young lord, I am only, it's just a small task, and it forced you to use secluded palace's forbidden art. If you're not trash, then what are you? The man laughed coldly as he interrupted Yu Ji's explanation. His smile was sinister. Yes, I am trash. Yu Ji didn't even dare to resist as his forehead heavily smashed onto the ground. Since you're trash, then you shouldn't stay in this world. The man's icy cold voice had no trace of emotions. Just as his words landed, Yu Ji gave a miserable "ah" as his body suddenly floated into the air. Immediately after, under everyone's gaze, his body exploded and turned into a blood mist as it floated in the air. The death of the host, the two enormous wild beasts, also dissipated along with the wind. The entire auction finally became much more spacious. The disappearance of the monsters made the various powerhouses cultivators, whose hearts were hanging in suspense, finally relaxed. All of them heaved a long sigh of relief, but everyone relaxed. Yiqing Luo only felt fear surging up her heart. To tell the truth, if it was her, she would never be like this man and kill Yu Ji so cleanly. After all, the purpose of secluded Silence's existence was merely to provide blood for those two dark-type wild beasts. The two beasts were there. It was beneficial to the dark Nether Palace. But the man didn't. The man didn't hesitate at all and killed Yu Ji so easily. This action could only mean two things. Firstly, the man only cared about acting cool and didn't think too much about it. Secondly, the reason for that was because the man's strength gave him absolute confidence that he would be able to destroy the auction without any external help. Yiqing Luo was more inclined towards the second option. That man had absolute strength and absolute confidence. The existence of Yu Ji and Shui didn't matter. Just now, when the man made his move, she didn't even see the man's movements. This was enough to show the difference in strength between her and the man. Perhaps he felt the uneasiness in Yiqing Luo's heart. The arm around her waist tightened a little. She looked up and met the man's concerned gaze. He said nothing, but his eyes were full of concern for her. Yiqing Luo calmed herself down as she shook her head at him. Mo Xian's fingers circled around her waist as he pacified her emotions. Their gazes met. Chapter 37:53. Every step the man took, his surrounding energy, made Yiqing Luo feel terror and danger. The man who was hugging her waist also increased the strength in his hands. Both arms brought her petite body into his chest, blocking the man's threatening force. Just as that man was about to get close, a remnant shadow flashed past. Zhu Wuxian stood in front of Mo Xian and Yiqing Luo. His tall and slender body blocked the man's footsteps. Young Patriarch Chu. The man smiled, his gaze was indifferent, and his tone was so light that it made one's hair stand on end. Zhu Wuxian's gaze met his. Young Patriarch Yuzun. The man who was addressed as Yuzun's eyes were cold. Why, after not cooperating with Nether Palace, you intend to become enemies with Nether Palace? Zhu Wuxian was expressionless. Dragon's reverse scale. Those who touch it shall be killed. Reverse scale? Yuzun's brows rose as his gaze went past Zhu Wuxian and landed on Yiqing Luo. Just a casual glance, as though he had seen some ant dregs. He then shifted his gaze away and sneered, "Her?" Zhu Wuxian didn't reply, only frowning his cold brows as his icy cold eyes faintly shone with a sinister chill. "Huh. Ha ha ha." Yuzun laughed out loudly as the gaze he gave Zhu Wuxian was filled with ridicule. Not long ago, the high and mighty young patriarch Chu actually fell in love with a lady. He laughed. On that handsome face, the pair of sinister and treacherous eyes was suffused with a hair-raising, cold glint. He was laughing. Zhu Wuxian was still expressionless. Yuzun was laughing and laughing when he suddenly stopped. He raised his hand and placed it on Zhu Wuxian's shoulder. "Young Patriarch Chu, previously we got along rather well. I don't want to fight with you." Zhu Wuxian glanced at the hand on his shoulder. His slightly creased brows were tainted with a sliver of disgust. He turned his head slightly, and a burst of profound energy pushed the hand on his shoulder down. His body was still standing on the original spot. Yuzun's expression gradually turned cold. "Looks like you've made up your mind to become enemies with Nether Palace." Zhu Wuxian still didn't say a word. He only slowly took a step back as his arm slowly raised up. An electric current coursed through his palm. Then a silver spear appeared in his hand. The entire body of the silver spear was emitting a silver light, and there was also lightning lingering around it. The totem on the silver spear was extremely complicated, and it was mixed with a strange aura. A powerful air current started to wreak havoc as Zhu Wuxian's weapon appeared. "All right, Good. Very good. Yu Zun's eyes darkened, and the treachery in his eyes deepened. If not for foster father's obstruction, I would have long wanted to fight with you. This opportunity is great. He leapt up, and his profound energy soared to the sky like a hot knife through butter, exploding with a loud bang. The sound shook the surroundings, causing the earth and mountains to shake and sway endlessly. Two figures quickly intertwined with each other. The surrounding people were all forced to take a few steps back by these two powerful forces. Wait! Suddenly, just as the two forces were about to collide, a light and indifferent voice broke the current atmosphere. The two of them looked in the direction of the voice. Amidst the surging energy, a purple figure slowly walked over. Along with that person walking over, the surging profound energy in the surroundings was like a mouse seeing a cat, and it actually obediently calmed down. The man looked like he was strolling in his own garden. Di-Zun. Chapter 3754. Di-Mo Xian slowly walked to Zhu Wuxan's side. He raised his hand. Like drifting clouds, his sleeves fluttered. The aura between the Dark Lord and Zhu Wuxin vanished in an instant. Di-Mo Xian shot a glance at Zhu Wuxan as he waved his hand, "Make way." Zhu Wuxan didn't move as his cold face and eyes turned icy cold. Lil Luo, is this Lord's future wife, so there's no need to trouble young Master Zhu to protect Lil Luo. Di-Mo Xian spoke calmly, but his tone was filled with pressing pressure. Zhu Wuxan's body sunk slightly, as though his back was crushed by something invisible. But he still didn't move his feet. Only facing Di-Mo Xian's gaze, he said word by word, "I want to protect her. It has nothing to do with anyone else. This Lord's wife doesn't need an outsider to protect her." Di-Mo Xian's eyes sunk when he heard that. His sleeves moved, and an invisible force swept Zhu Wuxan's body up, throwing him directly into the black-robed man's battlefield. Just as he was about to smash into the black-robed man, Zhu Wuxan's body jolted as he shook off the profound energy which entangled him. Following that, he slammed his palm on the ground as he bounced up. He quickly stabilized his figure as he looked at Di-Mo Xian with an icy, cold expression. "Since you want to help Lil Luo so much, then help her protect these people whom she wants to protect." Di-Mo Xian's lips curled into an evil smile as his tone was light, as though he was ridiculing Zhu Wuxan. "You." The Nether Prime, who had been silently watching the two of them interact, slowly spat out a word. He looked at Di-Mo Xian in puzzlement and looked at Zhu Wuxan. Immediately following that, his lips curled into a deep, evil smile. "This makes me curious. What kind of woman is she, to actually make Di-Mo and young Patriarch Chu so infatuated with her?" Yu Zun laughed evilly. The pair of treacherous cold eyes went past Di-Mo Xian and looked at that petite figure behind him. The current Yiqing Luo was standing in the safe zone as she looked at the situation on their side without blinking. Di-Mo Xian had conjured an enchantment around her, helping her to block the powerful and mysterious man called Yu Zun's aura. Noticing Yu Zun's gaze, Yiqing Luo's brows creased. A chill of fear rose in his heart for no reason. She pressed on her heart and suppressed the uneasiness in her heart. Her mind was filled with the words that Di-Mo Xian had whispered into her ear when he was setting up the barrier earlier. "He is an old friend of mine." An old friend? What kind of old friend was it? Yiqing Luo didn't delve deeper into it and didn't question further. To be called an old friend by Di-Mo Xian. Yiqing Luo had only met Baisu. Yu Zun was the second. Apparently, Baisu was an old acquaintance of his and had a good relationship with him. But the Dark Lord was different. From his reaction and gaze when he saw Di-Mo Xian, Yiqing Luo could conclude that the relationship between these two was not harmonious. It could even be described as tense. "Take your eyes back." DMO Xian's body moved slightly and blocked Yu Prime's vision. This sovereign is very easily jealous, so… This sovereign's woman, you'd better not look too much. Ha! Ha ha ha! Yu Zun was tickled by DMO Xian's words as a horrifying laughter burst out from his throat. Chapter 37:55. DMO Xian's eyes turned colder by the minute. Yu Zun's laughter stopped as he shook his head. All right, I won't say any more. His words had just ended when he suddenly pointed at DMO Xian. The smile on his face was instantly replaced by a sinister chill. He pointed at DMO Xian as he spoke sternly. The current you. I really look down on you. Following his words, the sky full of profound energy interweaved as terrifying profound rays were released from his entire body. The huge force was like a raging gale. Numerous cultivators had their hearts crushed under this force as they vomited blood and died. Especially those cultivators who joined the secluded palace. Those who were closest to them were almost annihilated. Under this force, DMO Xian's robe was fluttering in the wind, but he still didn't move an inch, as though a towering mountain was standing there. Yi Qing Luo's heart was tightly gripped as though it was about to jump out from her throat. Help! More and more painful cries rang beside her ears. Another large batch of cultivators from various powerhouses fell. Even Zhou Mo, Mao Mao, and the others were affected. She pursed her lips as her brows creased tightly. This couldn't go on. If all the people here died in the auction, they would all die. No matter what the reason was for Yu Zun's appearance. Anyway, Secluded Palace's motive had been achieved. Various powerhouses' elites had suffered heavy losses. If Secluded Palace took the opportunity to attack the Earth domain, Secluded Palace's power would expand accordingly. But this kind of anxiety, Yi Qing Luo could not reveal it. Although Yi Qing Luo wasn't able to sense the confrontation between DMO Xian and Yu Zun, but she knew how dangerous it was. Especially, now DMO Xian's body was injured in the spirit-devouring array. If DMO Xian cared about other people's lives, this would only distract DMO Xian, and he wouldn't be able to go all out. She didn't want to see DMO Xian getting injured again. Perhaps the young lady's inner struggle and worry was transmitted to DMO Xian. Or perhaps he had seen through Yu Zun's motive, just as both parties' forces collided. DMO Xian's sleeves suddenly moved. A shapeless air wave enveloped the entire auction. If you want to fight, this lord will accompany you. DMO Xian's lips rose. Then let's fight. The figures of him and Yu Zun disappeared in the airwave. Even the airwaves that lingered around the auction completely disappeared. Xian! Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted as her heart sank. She patted the barrier of the enchantment. Xian! Xian! Where did Xian go? Why did it suddenly disappear? She hammered the barrier. He was eager to rush out of the barrier. However, the moment she raised her hand and hammered again, like water, the barrier suddenly disintegrated. This made Yi Qing Luo's heart felt as though it was being strangled by something, as the anxious and worried emotions invaded her body and mind. Lass, don't worry. Old Man Tsang's voice came from his mind. Zun only used the divine consciousness space to suck him, and that man called Yu Zun into the divine consciousness space to fight. Divine awareness space? Was it similar to the space where she had entered the Azure Dew bracelet? Something like that. Old Man Tsang explained. Zun should be clear that if they were to start a battle in the auction, based on their ability, they would definitely destroy the entire auction. Not only the people in the auction's array would die, the entire Earth boundary would not be spared. So Zun thought of this idea. Entering the divine consciousness space to fight, no matter how ferocious the battle was, it would not affect everyone. Chapter 37:56. Old Man Tsang was silent for a moment, but he knew Yi Qing Luo's character very well. If he didn't answer, It would only make her more worried. He sighed and said, "If the venerable sovereign is injured, his divine consciousness will also suffer great damage." Yi Qing Luo's petite body stiffened as she looked towards the direction where DMO Xian had disappeared in astonishment. But, with venerable sovereign strength, he won't allow himself to be injured. Old man Tsang looked at Yi Qing Luo's look and sighed helplessly. Didn't the Overlord say that for you he will let himself get hurt? Since he chose to do this, he must have full confidence. If he hadn't reached the spirit-devouring formation and was me, then he wouldn't be like this. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips tightly as her eyes turned slightly red. There seemed to be something pressing down on her heart. It was very, very heavy. She could hardly breathe under the pressure. Little girl. Old man Tsang didn't know how to comfort her. Suddenly, an ice-cold voice sounded. He didn't remove the barrier before he left just to let you be sad here. That voice was cold and indifferent, but it was like a sharp blade, fiercely stabbing into Yi Qing Luo's eardrums. She suddenly raised her head and looked in the direction of the voice. Zhu Wuxin walked over expressionlessly. You can't participate in their battle and can't help much. Yi Qing Luo's heart tightened as her face turned pale. She pursed her lips and lowered her eyes. She knew with her strength she was totally unable to take part in the battle between DMO Xian and Lord Yu. If she was worried about DMO Xian and forcefully joined their battle, he would only be a burden. Thinking of this, Yi Qing Luo's petite body started to tremble uncontrollably. She clenched her fists and her eyes reddened. Not enough, she was too weak. If she continued like this, when would she be able to walk side by side with a Xian? When exactly would she be able to become even stronger? Why was she so weak? Yi Qing Luo asked herself over and over again, sentence by sentence. It was as if he was possessed. The shadow and darkness in his heart were expanding infinitely. Suddenly, Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightened. A sharp pain came. Her consciousness cleared up a little. Before she could react, her delicate body suddenly leaned forward, and her entire body fell into a cold but wide embrace. Yi Qing Luo was stunned and wanted to struggle. However, the man's cold voice drifted into her ears. During the first half a month in the land, I hugged you and took care of you like this every day. Are you not used to it? Yi Qing Luo's petite body suddenly stiffened. Are you angry? Disappointed? You don't think you should trust me, right? Feeling the reaction of the person in his arms, Zhu Wuxin sneered. Unfortunately, you trust me so much that you think I won't do anything to you. He lowered his head and his breath got closer to her. Yi Qing Luo, don't you understand men? Would a normal man be indifferent to a woman that he has been thinking about for so long? His approach made Yi Qing Luo's slender brows crease tightly. Yi Qing Luo's body shifted slightly as she avoided Zhu Wuxian's approach. However, his arm was still tightly gripping her wrist. It was very painful, but Zhu Wuxin did not intend to let go. Chapter 37:57. Zhu Wuxian's lips curled upward slightly, and under that grave and stern face, it revealed some evilness. Yi Qing Luo's gaze turned slightly chilly as her tone turned chilly. Don't use this kind of childish tricks to sow discord between Xian and me. Don't belittle a man's jealousy. Zhu Wuxian saw that she wasn't as flustered and exasperated as he had imagined, nor was there any trace of flustered look. His brows unknowingly creased. Yi Qing Luo scoffed lightly as the chill in her eyes deepened. Zhu Wuxian, don't turn yourself into a look that even you hate. Her words made Zhu Wuxian's expression retract bit by bit. Yi Qing Luo took a faint glance at him as she started walking towards the direction of the battlefield. Zhu Wuxian was right about one thing. Before Xian entered the soul consciousness space, he specially released her barrier, not just to let her inner demons enter her body, to make her feel sorry for herself. Xian knew that she couldn't possibly stand at a safe place and watch the battle between the various powerhouses and Nether Palace. Thinking of this, the resolute glint in Yi Qing Luo's eyes turned even brighter. Xian was still fighting with his injuries to stop Nether Palace's plans and actions. She couldn't sit here and wait for death. At least, these black-robed men in front of her must be dealt with. Furthermore, there was no time to lose. Even for her, in this array which was enveloped by the black, sinister qi, she would be caught by the inner demons, almost losing control and being devoured by the inner demons. Not to mention the other cultivators. Yi Qing Luo looked towards the direction of the black-robed men as her eyes squinted, sinister and treacherous, just as she was about to leap over to the black-robed men's side. Behind her, Chu Wu Xian's voice rang, "Yi Qing Luo." She didn't turn back. Chu Wu Xian had already quickened his pace as he teleported in front of her. Yi Qing Luo raised her head to look at him. His brows creased as he looked at Yi Qing Luo without blinking. "What did you mean by that sentence earlier?" Yi Qing Luo hadn't reacted in time. "What you said earlier. Chu Wu Xian, you said don't turn yourself into a look that even you hate. What makes you think that I will hate that kind of self?" Yi Qing Luo looked at him quietly. His eyes were calm and cold, without any ripples. A moment later, she opened her pink lips and said indifferently, "Zhu Wu Xian, what I said to you came from my heart." Zhu Wuxin was not someone who would take advantage of others when they were down. His pride would not allow him to do anything to her in that situation. Chu Wuxin's words were just to stab her. However, even he himself would find it hard to accept such a method. He had never been one to use words to provoke or hurt others. Even he hated himself for being like this. Yi Qing Luo took a deep look at him and didn't say another word. Shortly after, he directly passed him and leaped up onto Shiju's back. Then he summoned the Azure Dragon and charged into the black-robed people. Until Yi Qing Luo had walked far away, Chu Wuxin was still rooted to the spot. His body was stiff like a stone statue. What did he say to Yu Ji? In his mind, the girl's sweet and firm voice seemed to ring. "I don't understand Zhu Wuxian, but the only thing I can be sure of is that Zhu Wuxian is not that kind of person. What if I really do it? You won't. That firmness, that straightforwardness, that kind of trust." Zhu Wuxian's stiff hand slowly lifted up and pressed on his chest. An indescribable joy started to spread in his heart. After a long, long time, his lips curled as he laughed softly. Chapter 3758. The Other Side. After Yi Qing Luo joined the battle, she brought along Shiju and Azure Dragon, totally oppressing those black-robed men one by one, as though they were dregs. The three underworlds were all dead. Pharaoh Crane was also dead. The black-robed men of the Netherworld Palace had no one to command. As for the profound practitioners who joined the Nether Palace, when the Nether Prime released his profound energy, a large number of them were killed by the shockwave. Those profound practitioners who were struggling at death's door right now wouldn't amount to anything. Those profound practitioners wanted to beg for mercy. Too late for regrets. But there was no room for regret. They had been imprinted with the mark of the abyss. If he had any thoughts of betraying the Palace of Darkness, he would explode and turn into a bloody mist. It was because they were afraid of death that they chose to join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. At the same time, Yi Qing Luo brought Azure Dragon and charged into the black-robed men, starting the battle. The surviving, profound practitioners of the major forces had yet to recover from their daze. They looked in shock at the direction where DMO Xian had disappeared, and looked at the red-robed young lady who was protected by the green dragon's huge body. Executive Elder A's face turned pale. His lips trembled as he spat out a few words. Did we hear it wrong? Just now, that purple-clothed man. That's His Majesty. Executive Lao, he asked. The cultivators from the other powers were shaking their heads in disbelief. Di-Zun, that man was the Overlord. The Di-Zun, who had disappeared for a long time, had actually appeared in the land. Overlord. Di-Luo. Yi-Ching Luo. City Lord Lu muttered these few names softly, as though he suddenly understood something. She said she's called Di-Luo and wasn't lying to us. She merely took her husband's surname. Taking her husband's surname. When everyone heard these 3 words, they were stunned. Take her husband's surname. In other words, that woman named Yi-Ching Luo was the Overlord's wife, the Imperial Madam. How dare they question Lady Di? Everyone looked towards the direction where DMO Xian disappeared. He was also very curious. Why, ever since Di-Zun stepped into the auction, why didn't they notice the Overlord's presence? They knew very well in their hearts. It was definitely not because they were fighting with the Palace of Darkness and did not notice the Overlord. At that time, His Majesty seemed to be shrouded in a layer of gray mist, making it impossible to see his face clearly. It was as if it was completely inconspicuous. However, just as the Overlord dispersed the mist and walked towards the man called Yu-Zun, all eyes were on the Overlord. Brother Qiao, Pei Sheng's dark golden eyes widened as he looked at the figure among the black-robed men. He was shocked. Is she really the wife of His Majesty? At this moment, Pei Sheng was shocked. It looked a little like the shy young man who didn't have golden eyes. Qiao Yinyan did not speak. His expression congealed as he stared fixedly at Yi-Ching Luo's direction. In his deep eyes, there seemed to be a whirlpool surging. His energy surged. His silver hair was blown into a mess by the wind, and it hit his face. Brother Qiao. Pei Sheng nudged Qiao Yinyan when he didn't reply. Qiao Yinyan's eyelashes fluttered as he lowered his eyes and met Pei Sheng's dark golden eyes. His expression sunk slightly as he opened his mouth. What are you still in a daze for? Letting a Luo fight alone? Chapter 37:59. Pei Sheng scratched his head, feeling that Qiao Yinyan's reaction was a little strange. Suddenly, a slap landed on the back of his head. Old Lai snorted. Just a blockhead like you. What can you understand? Hurry up and go over to help. What a waste of the energy that you had just ignited. After saying that, he leaped into the air, stepped on Pei Sheng's shoulder, and charged into the battlefield. Pei Sheng was dumbstruck from being stepped on, but seeing the both of them fighting on the battlefield. Scratching the back of his head, he also charged in. The 3 of them made the various powerhouses cultivators react to the shock. They didn't hesitate any further as they swiftly charged into the battlefield. There weren't many dead corpse puppets on the Nether Palace's side. To be able to persist till now was merely because of their undying and indestructible physique. Even if the various powerhouses cultivators suffered heavy losses. But in terms of quantity, they still suppressed the Nether Palace by a large margin. A bunch of cultivators joined in. This instantly increased the pressure on the black-robed men's side, as the number of people who fell became more and more. Yi-Ching Luo was extremely glad that Lord Yu thought highly of himself. He was too blindly confident. He killed Yu Ji. Only then did they have a chance to catch their breath. Without the help of those heaven-defying monsters, this bunch of black-robed, dead corpse puppets, no matter how undying and indestructible physique, they couldn't withstand the bombardment and encirclement of many cultivators, especially with Yi-Ching Luo's glower flame fan, Shiju, and an azure dragon. This combination made their physique totally useless. The battlefield gradually regained its tranquility. The black-robed men all fell onto the ground, no longer reviving, no longer climbing up. Those cultivators who joined the Nether Palace stained the ground with their blood. Various powerhouses cultivators panted heavily as they looked at the blood-stained scene in front of them, feeling complicated. Yi-Ching Luo returned to the ground. Looking at the battlefield which had been settled, she heaved a sigh of relief. She hugged Shiju, which had transformed into a leopard, into her arms. Imperial Madam, we finally settled these monsters. What should we do next? Executive Elder's attitude towards Yi Qing Luo was much more respectful. Hearing Executive Elder's question, everyone's gazes immediately turned over. These Nether Palace monsters have been settled. But how do we walk out of the auction? If we continue to be trapped here, we will die sooner or later. Furthermore, have you guys noticed that the Yin energy around us is getting thicker and thicker? I feel like I'm even breathing in a mouthful of cold air. Everyone was flustered. But due to Yi Qing Luo's status, they only dared to complain in a low voice. Yi Qing Luo's gaze swept across the surroundings. Indeed, the Yin Qi here was getting thicker and thicker. This meant that the formation was assimilating into the auction. If he didn't think of a way to leave the auction, he would be dead. It was very likely that they would not be able to control their inner demons. In the end, they would kill each other and die miserably here. So, even if they killed all the monsters from the Palace of Darkness, it would be useless. Yi Qing Luo closed her eyes. In his mind, he pictured the terrain of the auction, trying to determine the location of the formation core set up by the gloomy palace. As long as there was an opportunity to break the formation, he would definitely be able to break through this formation. After closing his eyes, his other senses would become extremely clear. Yi Qing Luo's ears suddenly twitched. She swiftly opened her eyes as her gaze fell onto the ground. What's the matter? Executive Elder was shocked by Yi Qing Luo's sudden action. Chapter 3760. What's that? When the crowd heard that, they looked towards the ground in panic. Just when everyone placed their senses on the ground, the crowd then felt it clearly. There seemed to be something on the ground, which was surging towards their direction at high speed. That's right. It was the feeling and sound from the ground. Everyone's expression changed greatly as they stared at the ground in alarm and worry, afraid that the ground would suddenly surge out, like those monsters earlier, a monster that they couldn't deal with. Hiss, hiss, rustle. Just as the crowd held their breaths and were alerted, a burst of sound of something rubbing against the ground was heard. Quick, look over there. Among the crowd, someone pointed to the front and shouted loudly. The crowd looked towards the direction of the voice. Then they saw that blood-stained ground. There are some densely packed black things crawling quickly. The crowd also noticed it. Those densely packed things were all things that crawled out from the dead corpse puppets' bodies. One after another, like a patch of black sesame, densely spread out in front of their eyes. The crowd instantly felt their scalps turning numb. What are those things? Madam D, what are those? Why are they crawling out from those monsters' bodies? Those things. What are they trying to do? How should we deal with them? The crowd panicked as they anxiously asked Yi Qing Luo when they saw that patch of densely packed black things. Even Yi Qing Luo felt goosebumps all over her body. What were those things? Even if they asked her, she didn't know. Previously, when they crossed hands with this bunch of dead corpse puppets, other than the dead corpse puppets oozing out yin qi, there was no such situation. Although she couldn't guess what those black things were, but Yi Qing Luo was certain. Those things were absolutely not any weaker than that white teeth, blood teeth. Furthermore, these things were even scarier. That is, corpse puppet goo. The green dragon seemed to have recognized those things as its whiskers floated up. Its body suddenly made a turn. It spat out a burst of dragon's breath as it blew those black things which were nearing quickly back. The dragon's breath swept up the wind, covering the sky and covering the earth. Densely packed black things, densely laid out in front of them. Then it landed on the ground and speedily rushed towards their direction. When the azure dragon was blowing his dragon breath, Yi Qing Luo finally saw the ground clearly, What exactly were those densely packed things? They were black bugs about the size of a fingernail, one on top of the other. Densely packed together, they spread out. Corpse puppet parasite? Yi Qing Luo repeated the name that Azure Dragon said. Parasite? That bug is a goo? The green dragon speedily swept up Yi Qing Luo as she floated up into midair. What exactly is the corpse puppet parasite? This was the first time Yi Qing Luo had seen the Azure Dragon having such a reaction toward a species. Azure Dragon had a headache. The corpse puppet goo is a very evil goo technique. Those who create this goo technique are basically witchcraft masters. I'm afraid the Dark Palace is purposely using these corpse puppet goo to destroy the entire land. Yi Qing Luo found out from the green dragon's mouth. The corpse puppet goo was a goo that was raised in corpses since young. It needed all kinds of corpses as fodder, and after being irrigated with fresh blood, the goo worms would be nurtured. This kind of insidious goo worm, don't look down on its small size. Chapter 37:61. Because this goo worm could eat a person's heart and burrow into the heart to control the person's body, as long as that person's body hasn't decayed. The goo worms could control the body and use that person's identity to live. Most importantly, this kind of goo was not easy to discover. Even if ordinary goo masters came, they would not be able to find any traces of the corpse puppet goo. Even if they found out, they wouldn't be able to deal with them. For example, the things inside the goo incense could not suppress the corpse puppet goo at all. Such a sinister and terrifying corpse puppet goo. Generally speaking, being able to nurture 10 out of 10,000 goo worms was already considered very successful. But now, Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she scanned the densely packed scene below her. There were at least tens of thousands of corpse puppet goo here. Why are there so many corpse puppet goo? No. Yi Qing Luo sat on the green dragon's head as she looked at the pitch black below. These corpse puppet parasites had escaped from the corpse puppet parasite's body, and that means that the corpse puppet parasites were arranged by the Palace of Darkness. If the corpse puppet parasites and 3 nether failed, these corpse puppet parasites would replace them to complete the following mission. So many corpse puppet goo. The surviving profound practitioners of the major forces in the auction would become food for the corpse puppet goo. The goal of the Dark Nether Palace would be achieved. More importantly, at least tens of thousands of corpse puppet goo were released. There was no way to take it back. By the time the corpse puppet goo had devoured all the profound practitioners of the major forces in the auction, it was very likely that the Palace of Gloomy Darkness would remove the barrier of the auction. At that time, the corpse puppet goo were moving around everywhere in the land domain. The entire land, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. Azure Dragon, is there any way to deal with the corpse puppet parasite? Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips tightly as she asked. The Azure Dragon spat out a dragon's breath. No. Yi Qing Luo looked down and her eyes suddenly froze. She placed Shiju on the Azure Dragon's back and immediately leapt up, diving down from the Azure Dragon's back. Be careful. Her fingertips moved and the glowing flame fan opened up. Strong, profound energy turned into a hurricane as it swept downwards. Boom! The dark force hit the ground and created a strong wind, just in time to block the large group of corpse puppet goo that was charging up. The executive elder was so shocked that he took a step back. Qiao Yinyan and Pei Xing also reacted quickly. They grabbed the executive elder's shoulders and pulled him back. The corpse puppet goo's attack was blocked. However, before the executive elder could heave a sigh of relief, that densely packed stretch of them had already knocked away the strong wind which Yi Qing Luo had created earlier, as they swarmed over once again. There were a few profound practitioners who were too slow in retreating. A corpse puppet goo climbed onto his body. Subsequently, the dense mass of corpse puppet parasites swallowed that profounder. Not even his bones were left. The corpse puppet goo was very fast. They were densely packed and swarmed together, leaving no gaps at all. This was especially true for the profound practitioners. As long as they were touched, the corpse puppet parasites would quickly crawl all over their bodies and devour them in an instant. Even their souls would be devoured. The profound practitioners of the various great powers were stupefied. One by one they screamed, turned around, and ran. Yi Qing Luo landed next to Pei Sheng and the others, as she flipped her hand and swept up a hurricane, once again obstructing those corpse puppet parasites which were surging towards them. Chapter 3762. The speed of the cultivators from the major forces could not match up to the zombies. Seeing that Yi Qing Luo was safe, they immediately rushed towards the direction of Yi Qing Luo and the rest. Countless corpse puppet goo followed closely behind. From all directions, the densely packed corpse puppet goo swarmed towards the group. Don't come over. Don't come over. The executive elder's expression changed when he saw that. More and more zombies started to surround them. The wind created by the few of them could not withstand the invasion of thousands of zombies. No, if this goes on, we will all be devoured. Qiao Yinyan frowned slightly. Pei Sheng looked at the green dragon hovering in midair. Ah, Luo, let the green dragon bring you away first. You will only be waiting for death if you stay. This place has been set up by the secluded palace. Unless we find a way to break the array, none of us can leave here. After Yi Qing Luo finished her sentence, she looked at Pei Sheng. Moreover, I will not leave you all in danger and leave alone. Yi Qing Luo waved her glower flame fan. A violent burst of profound energy shot out, instantly covering those zombies. A large number of zombies collided and squeezed in the dazzling red light. Yi Qing Luo's fingertip moved. She injected another burst of profound energy. Those zombies that were covered were instantly shattered by the profound energy. A large wave of corpse puppet goo exploded into pieces, but dealing with this wave of zombies was of no use at all. There was still an endless stretch of zombies behind. These worms are so disgusting. Kitty Lee's face was filled with unbearable expression. Her little claws kept scratching her body. Even her hair was standing on end. Zhou Emo held her in his arms, stroked her little head, and comforted her. It's all right, I will protect you. His words were gentle, but the expression on his face was extremely cold. Awu. Zhou Emo stroked Kitty Lee's fur while looking at the expressionless Gue Wu. Do you have any way to deal with this damn thing? Yes. Gue Wu lightly spat out a word. Zhou Mo's eyes lit up and was about to ask what was the solution. But he heard Gue Wu lightly spitting out the next sentence. There's no way here. Zhou Emo understood Gue Wu's meaning. In this place, the auction was trapped by the array. Even if he had a way, he couldn't use it. Stop these corpse puppet goo from approaching first. Reduce the number of deaths. Yi Qing Luo also understood their conversation. Before there was no other way. He could only choose to stop it. The more people died, the worse it would be for them. Shrugging his shoulders, Zhou Emo shot a glance at Gue Wu. Both of them exerted their strength at the same time. Their Xian Qi exploded and charged forward. Pei Sheng and the others quickly joined the interdiction team. Wave after wave of corpse puppet goo were torn apart. But soon after wave of corpse puppet goo came. This caused everyone's scalps to go numb, and a wave of despair instantly assaulted them. Calm down. If we lose our footing, we will give those bugs a chance. The executive elder shouted at the top of his lungs. Do you see Madame D, young Master Qiao, and young Master Pei? Do you see those people? Everyone unite. These insects aren't like the monsters from before that can counter our attacks. The profound practitioners of the major forces were originally a little afraid. But as the number of corpse puppet goo increased, the surging also became more and more intense. Qiao Yinyan and the others couldn't take care of everyone. Chapter 3763. Various powerhouses cultivators joined in. This didn't make Yi Qing Luo and the rest feel relaxed. The corpse puppet Gu swarmed over in an overwhelming manner. It was as if a layer of black carpet had been laid out for the entire auction. Yi Qing Luo's trypophobia was about to act up. They couldn't stop to rest. If they were not careful, they would be swallowed by the corpse puppet Gu. No one was willing to take their own lives as a joke. All of them gathered their attention to stop the corpse puppet Gu. Yi Qing Luo's actions had almost become her body's instinct. She pursed her lips tightly as her vision swept across the surroundings. She wanted to find the Wu Gu master behind the scenes who was controlling these corpse puppet Gu. But her perceptive ability couldn't sense any other aura in the surroundings at all. If this went on, everyone would either be swallowed by the corpse puppet Gu or die of exhaustion of profound energy. After going through one battle after another, all the profound practitioners' minds and bodies were exhausted to the extreme. Now they were fighting with a bunch of worms. Almost everyone had started to feel numb. Thinking of the conversation between Zhou Mo and Gue Wu earlier, Yi Qing Luo suddenly raised her profound energy and increased her strength as she struck the incoming corpse puppet Gu flying. Her figure flashed as she appeared in the direction of the ghost martial artist. She just moved, which revealed a gap. The wave of corpse puppet Gu which Yi Qing Luo struck had exploded for just a moment. The corpse puppet Gu at the back had already taken the opportunity to attack this gap. "Roar!" Shiju growled as it pounced down from the green dragon's back, replacing Yi Qing Luo's position earlier. Its claw came down. It carried the might of the dragon clan and Mirage Beast. It turned into a stream of chi waves as it tore those corpse puppet Gu apart. The green dragon let out a low growl as it bent down. The dragon's breath spewed out as it rolled up the might of a sacred beast. Yi Qing Luo nodded towards the two battle pets and looked at Gue Wu as she asked, "Master Gue Wu, you said there's a way to deal with these corpse puppet Gu. What is it?" "Settle the Wu Gu master," Gue Wu replied. Yi Qing Luo replied, "Wu Gu master." "I didn't sense anyone else's presence in the auction. Is the Wu Gu master here?" A big shot like Gue Wu, his perceptive ability was definitely above hers. "Not here," Gue Wu replied straightforwardly, causing Yi Qing Luo's hope to be extinguished. But what made Yi Qing Luo curious was the Wu Gu master was not in the auction. Then, how did these corpse puppet Gu hide in the bodies of the corpse puppets, and why did they only start to move now? And most importantly, these corpse Gu swarmed in wave after wave. It seemed like there was no order. But from the process of fighting against these corpse puppet Gu and stopping them, Zhang Xian didn't know how to deal with them. These corpse puppet Gu were orderly as they carried out their tasks. Without the control of a Wu Gu master, how did these corpse puppet Gu attack in such an orderly manner? Little Qing Luo, you'd better not think about such a complicated matter. No matter how much you think, you won't be able to get the answer. Zhou Mo also leaned over as his narrow phoenix eyes shot a glance at Yi Qing Luo and continued. "Actually, there are many ways to deal with the corpse puppet Gu, but we're trapped in this array, so no matter how many ways there are, we won't be able to test it out." Yi Qing Luo asked, "What are the methods you mentioned?" Yi Qing Luo's words had just landed. Chapter 3764. What happened? The duo's reaction made Yi Qing Luo look over in alarm. The ground that was originally covered with corpse puppet Gu rose up like a small hill. It was more like something was about to break out of the ground. The corpse puppet Gu avoided that arched hill because of the changes in the ground. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted abruptly. "Something is approaching us from the ground." Could it be a new plan of the Palace of Darkness? Not necessarily. Gue Wu indifferently replied. It could also be a helper. Helpers? Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but twitched her lips in ridicule. Under such circumstances, would we still have helpers? Was he referring to the Emperor of the Earth Domain, or Historian of Balance, or someone from the Upper Realm? Yi Qingluo's tone was filled with ridicule. The Ling Gui Marshal General looked at her. You seem to be very hostile towards the forces of the Upper Realm? It's not hostility. Yi Qingluo's lips twitched as a smile surfaced in her eyes. It's just that I'm simply unable to agree with their actions of not taking responsibility for their high positions. He met the Historian of Balance in the Nirvana realm. Yi Qingluo didn't have any good impression of the Balance Historian. Their existence was said to restrict the balance of the major realms. But what really happened, Master? Indeed, they did not see anyone for a long time. Yi Qingluo had some doubts. The person behind the gloomy palace was actually the master of the so-called Balance Historian and the so-called Heavenly Tao, right? Even an invisible person like her could see through the goal of gloomy palace. She didn't believe it. The so-called heavenly axiom and those in power in the upper realm would not notice these little tricks. However, the Nirvana realm was almost destroyed and no one cared. The Earth domain was also in imminent danger. Still, no one showed any interest. It was ridiculous, right? When Gui Wu heard Yi Qingluo's words, the ridiculing expression on his face became even more obvious. He furrowed his brows. There are a lot of things that can affect everything if you pull one hair. It's not that the people of the upper realm are unwilling to get involved. It's just that things are too complicated. At this point, his voice paused and his brows furrowed even more. He did not continue speaking and continued to organize those corpse puppet goo. Yi Qingluo didn't pursue further. However, there was a question in his heart. Gui Wu had always been a person of few words. Apart from martial arts, there was nothing else that could interest him. Just now, such a person wanted to explain to her about her misunderstanding of the people in the upper realm. Could it be, wasn't Gui Wu also a member of the Balance Historian? Or one of the powers in power in the upper realm? Ka! Cha! Suddenly, the sound of the ground exploding interrupted Yi Qingluo's thoughts. A crack slowly appeared on the small hill on the ground, and it tore apart towards both sides. Hiss, hiss! The corpse puppet goo that was crawling on the ground suddenly seemed to have lost its target. It began to crawl around randomly. Many corpse puppet goo smelled the blood on the ground and pounced over, devouring the corpses on the ground at once. All the corpse puppet goo fell into chaos. It was originally a neat, orderly, and densely packed mass. Now, there was no order to it, and it was running all over the place at this moment. The arched ground began to shake, and the mountains began to shake. More and more things surged up from the ground. From the crack, a huge black shadow suddenly scurried out. Following that, everyone saw something long sweeping past their eyes. All the corpse puppet goo surrounding the crack. They disappeared in a split second. Chapter 3765. That's right. It had been swallowed. What was this thing? It even dared to swallow the corpse puppet goo. Yi Qingluo immediately looked over. She saw a huge mouth in front of her. His mouth was wide open, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth that looked like sharp blades. Opening its mouth, closing it, as though it could bite through everything in the world. Yi Qingluo's pupils shrank. Strange beast. This thing with only one mouth. Wasn't it the one she saw in the Nirvana realm when she participated in the Academy's competition? Strange beast. Similar to a mutated dragon, it could change into something according to the surrounding environment. Strange beast. There was such a thing in the Earth realm. Hey, female hero, we meet again. That huge mouth opened wide towards Yi Qingluo as he sniggered out. The breath it exhaled was very fishy. His red tongue kept swaying back and forth. Yi Qingluo. All right, this mutated beast was the same mutated beast that she had met in the Nirvana realm. Yi Qingluo's lips twitched. Why are you here? While she was asking, another corpse puppet rushed over. Yi Qingluo was about to release her profound energy. The mutated beast swiped its tongue and swept those corpse puppet goo into its stomach. It chewed a few times with a crunching sound. Inside its bloody mouth, black bugs were surging out in a dense manner. Then, the strange beast swallowed the corpse puppet goo. Amen, just like that, it swallowed it. Yi Qing Luo, who witnessed this scene, was dumbfounded. Didn't this thing like to eat meat? Now it even ate worms? How hungry was this child? After swallowing the corpse puppet goo, the strange beast's tongue swept its sharp teeth and grinned at Yi Qing Luo. Female hero, the omnipotent ball is here to save you! Yi Qing Luo felt that the bloody mouth, after swallowing the corpse puppet goo, became even more smelly. It was so smelly that she wanted to hammer it to shut its mouth. In fact, Yi Qing Luo really did that. She leaped up and stepped on the strange beast's bald, slippery head. With this one step, Yi Qing Luo had obviously stepped into its bloody mouth. Why have you come to the Earth domain? What are you doing here? Yi Qing Luo kicked its head. Answer properly, I don't have time to joke with you. The mutant's round body was pressed against the ground. Its tongue was hanging out of its mouth, swinging around. It's the master who asked me to help you. Let go of me. Release me. If you trample on my cute little head, master will feel sorry for me. Yi Qing Luo. She was really sorry. She totally couldn't see how this thing was cute. Before you call her cute, can you retract that tongue of yours? Master? Yi Qing Luo kicked it. Who is the master you're talking about? Apart from being able to transform into anything in the world, there was actually someone who could form a contract with an ugly monster that had no attack power at all. That person had even allowed this ugly creature with no attacking power to come to the Earth domain to help her? The mutant opened its mouth and said, My master is your good sister, the most beautiful, kind-hearted, and adorable Xiao Yingying. Mo Yuing? Yi Qing Luo was surprised. Mo Yuing actually formed a contract with a mutated beast. But that time in the array designed by the Dark Forces. Chapter 3766. How did Shadow know I'm here? And even specially asked you to come over? Although she believed the strange beast's words, but Yi Qing Luo still had some doubts. The strange beast rolled one round on the ground and started to chomp on the corpse puppet goo on the ground. That huge mouth seemed to be filled forever. It was making a ji bung bung sound as it replied, Yi Qing Luo, Master said that you would definitely need to do some sneaky things in the Earth boundary, and I'm the best tool for that. So he sent me over to help you. As it spoke, its tongue flicked around. The densely packed corpse puppet goo were still crawling around in its mouth. Yi Qing Luo had goosebumps all over her body, although this strange beast didn't have much attack power. But its ability to eat worms was still quite strong. Most importantly, after the strange beast finished eating the corpse puppet goo, there was no reaction at all. It seemed like it had been eaten. Those corpse puppet goo had completely disappeared. Moreover, when the corpse puppet goo climbed onto the strange beast's body and tried to swallow it, but no matter how they climbed onto the strange beast's body, or they would be slippery and fall down, or they couldn't even bite into it. Slippery, round, and bulging. The corpse puppet goo couldn't do anything to the strange beast, especially now after the strange beast drilled out from the ground. Not sure if it had destroyed the array, or destroyed the connection between the corpse puppet goo and the goo master. These corpse puppet goo were scurrying around without any order at all. This caused the mutant to be extremely happy as it ate. To it, although these corpse puppet goo ate corpses and had been nurtured until now. But in any case, it was still meat. As long as it was meat, it would be its favorite. Looking at the strange beast eating till its mouth was black, Yi Qing Luo didn't even want to take another look at it. Shadow sent you over. How did you find me here? And you even know how to dig a hole in the ground? The strange beast shook its tongue and replied. Master asked me to dig a hole in the ground, Shadow. Shadow knew she was trapped in the auction, and specially asked the strange beast to dig a hole in the ground, and linked it to the strange beast that could eat the corpse puppet goo. Shadow, did she know something? Then how about her? Yi Qing Luo asked. Master didn't come here. He just told me to. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips, and after listening to the first half of her sentence, she couldn't be bothered to listen to the second half. She looked in all directions at the insects covering the ground and interrupted its words. You came just in time. There are too many corpse puppet goo here. Since you like to eat them all. The appearance of the strange beast made Yi Qing Luo's side much more relaxed. However, it was still somewhat difficult for the other profound practitioners, especially the corpse puppet parasites that had lost their order. Although it was easier to deal with them, it was also not easy. But it was still easier than dealing with the waves of orderly attacks from before. However, these corpse puppet goo were crawling all over the place. There was less pressure to deal with it. However, the frequency of attacks was much higher. If he was careless, a corpse puppet goo might crawl into his body. The strange beast heard Yi Qing Luo's words. His swinging tongue immediately stopped. It was as if he was frightened. After a long time, it swayed its tongue and said, Master, I knew you wanted to kill me, so he specially asked me to bring a helper. Its words had just ended. Suddenly, its body fell. Its bloody mouth was facing the sky. An extremely strange cry came out from its mouth. Chapter 37:67. As the cries of the strange beast grew louder, that straight tongue formed the vibrations of the sound waves, twisting and turning. Following that, the ground suddenly shook. The ground was like a ripple rolling over, one round after another. The ripples were getting faster and faster. Everyone's gaze was focused on that direction. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sound of something breaking through the ground was heard. Immediately following that, in the huge hole in the ground, countless round and slippery mutant beasts crawled out of the hole. They only had a bloody mouth on their surface. These strange beasts were the size of a huge rock. In an instant, they occupied a third of the auction venue. Yi Qing Luo estimated that there were at least 50 over. Strange beasts. Hey, ugly monster. Yi Qing Luo looked at the complacent strange beast in front of her. The corners of her mouth twitched. You. Where did you get so many strange beasts? Don't ask her how she could see the complacent expression of the strange beast from its mouth. Anyway, she could see it. The strange beast instantly exploded, its tongue flicked, expressing its anger. Master gave me a name. I am called Chiu Chiu, not Ugly Monster. Chiu Chiu. This name was too cute, really not suitable to be used on a strange beast. You need our help now. Treat me better. If you make me unhappy, I will not help you deal with those disgusting bugs. The strange beast snorted arrogantly. Yi Qing Luo glanced at it, looking at its bloody mouth, which was filled with corpse puppet goo. Zhang Xian felt a chill run down his spine. If it was disgusting, was there a need to keep eating it? Furthermore, he was eating so noisily. It was obvious that he was enjoying the food. Let me tell you, Master said, as long as I bring a bunch of brothers over to help you, you will be in charge of our meat. We are carnivores. We want to eat meat. The strange beast stuck out its tongue again. The robotic voice shook Yi Qing Luo's ears to the point of pain. Stop the nonsense. Since you're here, hurry up and start eating. Let's finish eating these worms first. Yi Qing Luo lifted her leg and kicked it towards the direction where the corpse puppet parasites were. Chiu Chiu rolled around in a circle and muttered a few words. It obediently called out to the other mutated beasts and started to feast on the corpse puppet goo. The profounders from the various powers were dumbfounded as they stared at the sudden reversal of the situation. More than 50 mutated beasts appeared. They finally had time to catch their breath and rest. The two executive elders put down their weapons and sat on the ground, sweating profusely. Madam, thank you so much. You've saved everyone again. The profound practitioners of the various major powers immediately expressed their gratitude. Yi Qing Luo waved her hand. You don't have to thank me. It's the contribution of these strange beasts. After this matter is over, it's enough for you to treat these strange beasts well. The executive elder and the profound practitioners of the various great forces nodded repeatedly. Well said, well said. As long as I can leave this damned place alive. What was the point of taking out some meat to entertain these aberrations? As long as these strange beasts could protect their lives. Even if they had to eat till they were poor, they were willing. Yi Qing Luo's gaze swept across the surroundings and finally landed on the direction of the black hole which the strange beasts had drilled out from. Chapter 3768. Ah, Luo. Qiao Yinyan frowned as he called out to Yi Qing Luo. It's too dangerous for you to go alone. With Azure Dragon around, I'll be fine. Yi Qing Luo smiled at him. Pei Sheng's dark golden eyes flashed. He didn't agree with Pei Sheng's suggestion. Ah, Luo, Brother Qiao is right. The Palace of Darkness is too cunning. No one knows what kind of strange things will appear in the next second. Even with Azure Dragon, it is still too dangerous. Yi Qing Luo knew that they were worried about her. At this critical juncture, acting alone was simply an act of courting death. But she had to find the eye of the array as soon as possible and crack this array. She could feel that following the appearance of the corpse puppet goo, the atmosphere of the entire auction was getting gloomier and gloomier, as if every breath was filled with cold air. The reason why the cultivators from the major forces had yet to notice was because they were experiencing a life and death battle and were drenched in sweat. When they relax a little, Yi Zichin, this cold and evil Yin Qi, would definitely corrode them. Moreover, Yi Qing Luo's vision slowly looked towards the direction where DMO Xian disappeared. Her charming eyes were filled with a trace of hazy tenderness. Ah, Xian is still fighting for me. I also want to do something. At least when he returns in triumph, I can go home with him. Her voice was very gentle when she mentioned Ah Xian. Her eyes were filled with deep affection. Everyone was stunned by these words. Pei Sheng was the first to compromise. Then, Ah Luo, you have to be careful. I will. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up as she replied with a sweet smile. Just as she was about to walk towards Azure Dragon, a hand was placed in front of Yi Qing Luo. Qiao Yinyan's expression was grave. His deep eyes stared deeply at Yi Qing Luo. His silver hair, slapped on his face, made his expression look somewhat unreal. He opened his mouth. Ah Luo, if you insist on going, I'll accompany her. Qiao Yinyan hadn't finished his words. A voice that was as cold as ice interrupted his words. That voice was very light, but it was filled with unquestionable courage. He had effortlessly suppressed Qiao Yinyan's imposing manner. Qiao Yinyan pursed his lips, his face ashen as he looked in the direction of the voice. What is the meaning of this, Pavilion Master? I'll accompany her. It's safer than you. Zhu Wuxin's expression was indifferent. Qiao Yinyan gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He was indignant, but he couldn't refute this fact. Yi Qing Luo saw the atmosphere between the both of them getting fiercer and fiercer as she hurriedly coughed lightly. Then let's do it this way. We'll go investigate the surrounding situation first. Be careful and don't let your guard down. She didn't allow Qiao Yinyan and the others to follow her. He was worried that the Palace of Gloomy Darkness would come up with some sinister tricks. With the Azure Dragon's protection, she was not afraid. However, she could not guarantee Qiao Yinyan's safety. However, Zhu Wuxin was different. Putting aside the fact that Zhu Wuxin's strength was clearly not much different from the palace master behind the scenes of the Palace of Darkness. Otherwise, there would not be the talk of working together. And then there was Zhu Wuxin. In any case, no matter what she said, she would not be able to persuade Zhu Wuxin. In that case, he would just let him follow. After exhorting a few words, Yi Qing Luo kept Shi Ju into the pet space as she flipped over and leapt onto the back of the azure dragon, which had transformed into a normal size, flying towards the front. Zhu Wuxin leapt up and stood on the back of the azure dragon. The azure dragon's tail moved, as though it wanted to slap him away. Chapter 3769. The azure dragon exhaled and did not continue to use its tail to torment Zhu Wuxin. With two people on his back, he turned into a streak of blue light and disappeared before everyone's eyes. After a few twists and turns in the auction, the towering and magnificent buildings had already collapsed and turned into a pile of ruins. The eaves were crushed, and the beams and pillars of the house fell to the ground. Yi Qing Luo had been flying one round in the skies above the auction. As she took a look at the auction as a whole, she raised her head and looked at the barrier above her head. He approached the edge of the formation from a close distance. Yi Qing Luo could see it clearly. About 20 meters above the auction, there was a transparent barrier that looked like rippling water. Indistinctly, one could see the rampaging black gas twining around them, as Azure Dragon carried Yi Qing Luo on his back and neared them. That black chi actually turned into a huge, ferocious beast as it opened its bloody mouth and bit towards Yi Qing Luo. That stance seemed as though it wanted to swallow Yi Qing Luo into its stomach. There was a barrier between them. Yi Qing Luo could feel the yin qi rushing towards her. But Yi Qing Luo didn't have any intention to evade when that black chi opened its bloody mouth. She quietly raised her head and watched the bloody mouth descend. He looked calm and indifferent. Even the expression in his eyes did not change at all. Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wuxian's brows creased as he gave a low rebuke in displeasure, speedily approaching Yi Qing Luo as he stretched out his hand in an attempt to pull her away. But in the next instant, the black gas that had formed a bloody mouth smashed into the barrier of the formation. Instantly, it turned into a cloud of black smoke and disappeared. Zhu Wuxin's outstretched hand stiffened. Yi Qing Luo's expression was calm as she slapped Zhu Wuxian's hand away. "We're in the array, she can't enter." Zhu Wuxin's eyes flickered, and he withdrew his hand. "I need to find the core of this formation and break it." Yi Qing Luo took another look at the transparent, profound wave above her head as she pursed her lips slightly. "Zhu Wuxian, towards the Palace of Seclusion. You're more familiar with it. What do you think this array is?" Zhu Wuxin's eyes were still lowered, staring at his retracted hand in a daze. Hearing Yi Qing Luo's question, he suddenly raised his head. A pair of jet-black, icy-cold eyes directly met with Yi Qing Luo's eyes. He was stunned for a moment, until Yi Qing Luo repeated the question. Only then did Zhu Wuxin move his thin lips and say calmly, "I am only cooperating with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness for a certain purpose, but I do not know much about the Palace of Gloomy Darkness." He paused and seemed to have thought of something as he stared at Yi Qing Luo and spoke in an extremely serious tone. "I'm working together with the Palace of Darkness, but it doesn't mean that I'm doing things in the same way as them. Towards the Palace of Darkness, I despise the insidious tricks they play in the dark." Yi Qing Luo. She was slightly shocked by Zhu Wuxian's serious explanation. She expressed that she only thought that Zhu Wuxin was knowledgeable and would know the name of this formation. He didn't think too much about it. Zhu Wuxin had actually imagined so much. Wouldn't it be a little too embarrassing? Yi Qing Luo's lips twitched as she replied, "I'm just asking casually. Since you don't know, let's check again and find the array eye first." Without waiting for Zhu Wuxin's reply, Yi Qing Luo had already made the green dragon fly downwards. It circled around the huge rock ruins for half a round or so. Yi Qing Luo suddenly called out to the green dragon. She lowered her head as she looked at a certain spot below. That pair of narrow, long, charming eyes were sparkling brilliantly, like the brilliance of the sun and moon, dazzling and eye-catching. Yi Qing Luo suddenly raised her hand. The glower flame fan in her hands suddenly opened up. Chapter 3770. The glower flame fan instantly rotated as it floated above Yi Qing Luo's palm. She raised the other hand as profound energy enveloped her palm and injected it into the glower flame fan. The glower flame fan rotated faster and faster. All of a sudden, it turned into a sharp blade and charged towards a certain direction on the ground. The force of the dive was extremely strong. The bewitching red glow was extremely dazzling. The majestic, profound energy also revolved around the glower flame fan, which created a hurricane. Bam! The glower flame fan landed heavily on the ground. A deafening explosion was heard, accompanied by the shaking of the earth and mountains. Between the shattered rocks, a huge, deep pit was blasted out at a certain place. The remaining profound cheese might was still wantonly spreading. Billowing dust obscured everything in front of them. The green dragon was nearer to the ground. Dust and shattered rocks flew all over Yi Qing Luo and Zhu Wuxian's faces. Zhu Wuxian flicked his sleeves as he shook off the aftermath in front of him. He frowned as his cold eyes swept towards Yi Qing Luo. Towards Yi Qing Luo's actions, he was extremely puzzled. But he didn't ask the reason why Yi Qing Luo did this. He only pursed his lips tightly as he stared at Yi Qing Luo, waiting for her next move. Yi Qing Luo didn't have any intention to dodge the flying shattered rocks and dust. Instead, she leapt upwards, leaping down from the green dragon's back. She headed towards that deep pit which was shaking with the remaining might. She quickly stopped on a huge rock which was about to collapse and fall into the deep pit. The huge rock swayed slightly as it fell a little towards the deep pit. Even the surface of the huge rock had a few cracks on it. Yi Qing Luo carefully nudged her feet as she neared the huge pit. When the green dragon saw this, it immediately charged down and circled around Yi Qing Luo's side, protecting her at all times. Zhu Wuxian, who was standing on the green dragon's back, was also brought over by the green dragon. He took a look at Yi Qing Luo's careful look as she stood on the huge rock. In his icy cold eyes, an undetectable glint flashed past. Pursing his thin lips tightly, his brows rose slightly. He suddenly leapt up from the green dragon's back. His figure was light as he landed beside Yi Qing Luo. The huge rock, which was suspended in midair, was originally unstable as it swayed and hung by the side of the huge pit. Zhu Wuxin approached. Suddenly, the boulder lost its balance and fell into the pit. When the boulder shook, Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but stared fiercely at Zhu Wuxian. Just as the boulder was about to collapse, he leaped up. Just as he landed, he stepped on another boulder. Zhu Wuxin's body suddenly pressed closer. His hand stretched out directly as he clasped onto Yi Qing Luo's shoulder. Then, the other hand wrapped around her. It was as if he wanted to pull her into his arms. Zhu Wuxian. Yi Qing Luo was stunned by Zhu Wuxian's actions. As he stretched out his other hand, she immediately raised her hand and blocked Zhu Wuxin's wrist. "Let go. I'll support you, so there's no need for you to stand." Zhu Wuxian's cold eyes met her eyes and explained. Yi Qing Luo's lips twitched. "I don't need it." Zhu Wuxin's expression did not change. "Why do you like rejecting me so much? I don't have the energy to stay here and discuss this topic with you." Yi Qing Luo pushed his hand away from her shoulder. "I only want to find the direction of the array's eye and find the witch Gu master who is controlling the corpse puppet Gu. Then wait for Ah Xian's victorious return and leave with him. As for the rest, I don't want to." After she pushed Zhu Wuxian away, her figure flashed as she speedily stepped onto another piece of more dangerous, huge rock. But she staggered extremely. Chapter 3771. Zhu Wuxian fixed his eyes on her petite figure as he tried his best to maintain his balance. His expression sunk slightly as the chill in his eyes grew even more. Yi Qing Luo felt his icy cold gaze, but she didn't want to give any response. Zhu Wuxian's stubbornness had already seeped deep into his bone marrow. Even if she rejected him explicitly, Zhu Wuxian wouldn't listen to her. So she couldn't be bothered to emphasize that she wouldn't accept any feelings from him. Actions to prove it was the real proof. Yi Qing Luo concealed the emotions in her eyes as she refocused her attention on the deep pit. The remnant might was still vibrating. The rolling airwaves and dust made the entire deep pit look hazy. She stretched out her slender white wrist towards the deep pit. Her 5 fingers opened up. Swoosh! A sound that cut through the air was heard. A fiery remnant shadow flashed past and landed into Yi Qing Luo's palm. It was the glower flame fan. Yi Qing Luo held the glower flame fan as her profound energy burst forth. Immediately after, it swept up a hurricane as it charged into the deep pit. The surrounding remnant might and the billowing dust were all lingering in the hurricane. The situation in the deep pit. It was clearly reflected in Yi Qing Luo's eyes. Yi Qing Luo bent over slightly as she looked into the deep pit. The spacious and long deep pit was filled with shattered rocks. What are you looking for? Zhu Wuxian stood in the air as he stood behind her, his brows creased slightly. Yi Qing Luo didn't reply as her gaze swiftly wandered among the shattered rocks. Suddenly, her gaze stopped at a certain spot. Her lips curled as she laughed softly. Found it! Immediately after, she leapt up and stepped into the deep pit. Zhu Wuxian followed closely behind. Yi Qing Luo used her profound energy to carve out a path among the shattered rocks. Zhu Wuxian then saw that under the shattered rocks, a broken black vine was revealed. That vine was different from ordinary vines. The surface of the vine was covered with layers of sharp thorns, and densely packed, big and small holes occupied the entire vine. It was faintly mixed with strands of evil qi. This is... Zhu Wuxian frowned slightly when he saw the vine. He sensed an extremely uncomfortable feeling from the vines. A goo master's medium to control the corpse puppet goo. Yi Qing Luo stared at the vine for a long time, as she opened her mouth with a grave expression. The witchcraft master used this vine to control thousands of corpse puppet goo, which means to say, by following this vine, we will be able to find the witchcraft master. She paused and looked at the other end, at the vines that were still in the rock wall, and said, "This place might be the core of the formation." When Zhu Wuxian heard that, he looked at Yi Qing Luo's expression as it gradually turned gentle. A pair of cold eyes stared deeply at Yi Qing Luo. For some reason, Yi Qing Luo had a strange feeling being stared at by him, just like because her analysis made him feel very satisfied. This thought had just flashed across his mind. Then Zhu Wuxian asked, "How did you discover this place?" Yi Qing Luo replied, "Because of the mutated beast. Based on the direction in which the aberration beast emerged, as well as the fluctuations from the aberration beast, as well as the terrain of the auction, I was able to deduce its location." She narrowed her eyes. The expression on her face was slightly solemn and cold. "Let's hurry up and find the witchcraft master and the array core to settle the auction." As Yi Qing Luo said that, she tried to use her profound energy to touch that vine. However, before his dark force came into contact with the vines, Zhu Wuxian seemed to have sensed something as his expression suddenly turned cold. He swiftly stretched out his hand, trying to pull Yi Qing Luo to his side. Chapter 3772. Under the deep pit, the dark light swept out and illuminated the entire space. Yi Qing Luo felt a strong suction force, causing her red robe and black hair to curl up wildly. She could even feel an extremely dangerous aura rapidly spreading towards her. Danger! Yi Qing Luo's heart trembled violently. She didn't even have time to turn back. Meanwhile, Zhu Wuxian's hand reached out to her. Yi Qing Luo had no chance to hesitate. She quickly stretched out her hand towards Zhu Wuxian's palm. She had to get rid of this terrifying suction force. However, her hand had yet to approach Zhu Wuxin. That terrifying suction force instantly swallowed her whole body. The azure dragon instantly turned into a ray of green light and returned to Yi Qing Luo's pet space. Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wuxan sped up, wanting to rush into the whirlpool together with her. But when Yi Qing Luo's figure disappeared into the whirlpool black hole, the vortex quickly turned into a bolt of lightning. With a flash, it disappeared into thin air. Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wuxian's eyes were cold and sharp as he raised his palm, pushing it towards the direction where the whirlpool had disappeared. The ice-cold aura seemed to be able to destroy heaven and earth. At this moment, the broken vines that had lost all signs of life suddenly seemed to have received some kind of order. When Zhu Wuxian wasn't paying attention, suddenly it charged towards Zhu Wuxian's direction and wrapped around him. The vines were extremely fast. The vines were densely packed with small holes, and dense evil energy seeped out. They were like open mouths that wanted to swallow Zhu Wuxin. Scram! Zhu Wuxian was anxious, his expression as cold as ice. When the vines got close, he waved his sleeves and split the vines apart. The vines were torn apart and hung limply on the gravel. Zhu Wuxian's eyes sunk gloomily, because he had witnessed Yi Qing Luo disappearing right in front of his eyes. He was vexed and infuriated, making him unable to vent the anger in his heart. Suddenly, the words that Yi Qing Luo said earlier rang in his mind. His cold eyes narrowed slightly, and his killing intent immediately manifested. Dark Nether Palace. Dark Nether Palace. Yi Qing Luo had mentioned before that this vine was most probably the medium for the witchcraft master to control the corpse puppet Gu. It was also the direction of the eye of the formation. Since the Abyss Palace dared to hurt Yi Qing Luo, then he would destroy the plan of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. He was determined to break this array formation. The coldness in Zhu Wuxian's eyes was like a storm on a snowy mountain, sweeping through his pupils. He stared at the vine and slowly walked towards it. Suddenly, a shrill, sinister, and trembling voice rang out. "Young Master Chu, young Master Chu, please show mercy." Zhu Wuxin's footsteps halted. The source of the sound was the vine. He lowered his cold eyes and looked at the vine. The vine swayed its long and thin branches and said with a flattering smile, "Young Master Chu and the Palace of Gloomy Shadows used to be partners. There's no need to make things so awkward for such a small matter." Zhu Wuxin did not say anything. He was probably used to Zhu Wuxin's indifference. The vine continued, "As long as young Master Chu is an outsider and doesn't interfere in this matter, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness promises to do anything for young Master Chu unconditionally." Zhu Wuxin raised his eyes slightly, and in his eyes there was a glimmer. The vine naturally detected Zhu Wuxin's change and immediately laughed. "Young Master Chu has worked together with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness for many years, so you should understand the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. Since this is the condition that we have promised to young Master Chu, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness will definitely abide by it." After a long time. Chapter 3773. The person on the other end of the vine was startled by the long silence and felt his hair stand on end. Not getting an answer, he coughed lightly to break the deadlock. "Young Patriarch Chu, what do you think?" "Huh." A light laugh, like a cold wind brushing past one's face. Zhu Wuxian's thin lips curled into an extremely faint cold arc. His jet-black pupils were deep and icy cold, encircling layers of storms. He laughed. His laughter was icy cold. It made one's heart turn cold. On the other side, Yi Qing Luo was being sucked by that terrifying suction force as she felt the world spinning around her. Following that, she was thrown heavily onto the ground. The impact force made her frown in pain. She hadn't reacted in time to what was going on. Suddenly, A strong sense of danger gushed out from the bottom of her heart. It was almost her body's instinct. Yi Qing Luo slapped the ground fiercely. Her body quickly rolled a few rounds on the ground. The intense pain on her body intensified, and boiling hot blood seeping out from her wound. But she didn't have time to check on her wound. The place where she was at earlier, a burst of energy which seemed to be able to destroy the heaven and earth came crashing down. Even though she had avoided that burst of energy, Yi Qing Luo was still unable to avoid the remnant energy as she flew out once again. The moment her body rose into the sky, Yi Qing Luo swiftly circulated her profound jade heart and used her profound energy to drag her body, preventing her body from crashing onto the ground once again, causing her wound to worsen. What made her most surprised was that valiant energy which made one appalled. When she crashed onto the ground wasn't damaged at all. Profound light flashed and swept past. Then it dissipated in front of her eyes. What on earth was going on? That burst of boundless profound energy that was so strong that even her breathing felt oppressive. It absolutely couldn't be faked. And that intimidating remnant energy, she could feel it clearly. But why wasn't there any impact on the surrounding environment at all? Her slender brows creased tightly, just as she was about to raise her head and look towards the direction where the energy came from. Suddenly, a panicked and worried voice sounded beside his ear. "Lil Luoa?" Yi Qing Luo's body suddenly stiffened. She quickly propped herself up and looked towards the direction where she was called. What she saw was the man's imposing figure standing in the air. The man's purple robe danced wildly in the strong wind. His sleeves fluttered like rolling purple clouds, surging with hidden storms. The sky was filled with dark radiance and flowing lights. It made the man look like a deity. His peerless face was filled with worry. His almond-shaped eyes stared at her without blinking. His brows were filled with worry and anxiety. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted. Xian! Why did she see Xian? Didn't Xian go to the space of consciousness to fight with that person called Yuzun? Wait a minute. Space of consciousness? Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers trembled slightly. Suddenly, she stood up abruptly and took 2 steps back. She staggered a little. Where she was now, it was a place like the vast starry sky of the universe. There was nothing else in all directions. His dark force swept around him. Yi Qing Luo understood. It was sucked into the space of DMO Xian's consciousness. It was no wonder that the earth-shattering power had disappeared the moment it hit the ground. Because this was the space of consciousness. Why was she sucked into DMO Xian's space of consciousness? When could it be? A thought flashed past Yi Qing Luo's mind. Chapter 3774. Lil Luo DMO Xian's anxious growl was heard beside her ear. Yi Qing Luo saw DMO Xian's purple figure from the corner of her eye, closing in on her speedily. She realized something, but with her own speed, she had no way to react. Immediately following that, a gust of sinister wind closed in from behind. A hand clasped onto her shoulder. The violent and terrifying pressure made her chest feel stuffy as a mouthful of blood spilled out from the corner of her lips. A thick blood stench filled Yi Qing Luo's nose. She couldn't tell if it was the blood stench on her, or was it from the person behind her who was holding her neck tightly, emitting a bloody stench. It was so thick as though someone had poured a large bowl of thick blood into her throat. Lil Luo DMO Xian's pupils constricted as he roared. Violent, profound energy shot out, turning into thousands of layers of huge waves, attacking Yi Qing Luo's back. Overlord. Above her head, a slightly anxious and gloomy voice was heard. Following that, Yi Qing Luo felt the force on her neck increasing. A tyrannical and terrifying aura pervaded her surroundings. as though hell was beckoning to her. "If you dare to move, I'll bring her along to hell." The gloomy voice was filled with a probing threat. Yi Qingluo's neck was forced to tilt backwards. She gave a dull moan as her slender brows creased into a bundle. From this angle, she was coincidentally able to see that person's face behind her clearly. It was Yu Zun. Only the current Yu Zun was totally not as energetic as before when he appeared at the auction. The brocade robe on him had several holes in it. His hair, which was originally neat and tidy, also fell down, baring his teeth and brandishing his claws. His face was pale, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked extremely disheveled. Apparently it was a battle with Dmo Xian in this consciousness space. Dmo Xian had the upper hand. Oh! Her neck suddenly tightened. The icy, cold, prickling pain made her moan in pain. At the same time, the violent, profound energy, which surged over, instantly stopped. The man's furious growl was heard. "Yu Zun!" "Ha ha!" Yu Zun held on to Yi Qingluo as he laughed. "Have you ever thought that you would have such a day? Ha ha ha!" The probing had gotten the result. Holding on to Yi Qingluo as a bargaining chip, Yu Zun was completely fearless. Not long ago, a dignified, venerable emperor actually had a weakness. Ha ha ha! Let her go. Dmo Xian stared intently at Yi Qingluo. The worry in his eyes was not concealed at all. Looking at Yi Qingluo's pale face and her entire body covered in blood, his heart felt like it was being pricked by a needle. There seemed to be something in his body that was slowly eroding away at him. Even breathing had become extremely difficult. Yi Qingluo was suffering. He felt even more pain. "Tsk, Di Zun, with your intelligence, shouldn't you pretend that you don't care about this woman and take the opportunity to save her?" After revered Lord had his trump card, the humiliation he had suffered in Dmo Xian's hands earlier seemed as though he could get it back. He clasped Yi Qingluo's neck tightly as he laughed wildly. "Exposing your weakness to the enemy is a huge taboo." Yi Qingluo forced herself not to reveal a painful expression to make Dmo Xian worried. She knew that it was impossible for Dmo Xian to do what revered Lord said, because Dmo Xian was unable to gamble with her safety. He would rather let others know about her weakness, to use it to threaten him. He couldn't bear to let her suffer any harm. Only by letting revered Lord know that she was a threat to him. Chapter 3775. "Revered Lord, what do you want?" Dmo Xian's gaze was chilly as he stared at the hand which was clutching Yi Qingluo's neck as he said, word by word, "Let go of her. What do you want? I'll listen to you." When revered Lord heard that, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. "In this case, you're letting me deal with you because of this woman, right?" "Yes," Dmo Xian replied straightforwardly. "Then, I want you, the esteemed Overlord, to kneel in front of me and admit that I, revered Lord, am the only revered Lord in this world." Revered Lord laughed sinisterly as he lowered his head and looked at Yi Qingluo, who was being restrained by him. "Young lady, what do you think of this request?" Yi Qingluo's neck was forced backwards as her pair of charming eyes stared fiercely at revered Lord as she gritted her teeth. "Pooey! If you have the ability, try and make a move on me." "Ha ha ha! Young lady, before I die, I'll bring the person whom he treasures the most into hell. Seeing him in pain, it's not a loss for me." Revered Lord laughed sinisterly as he got closer to Yi Qingluo's face. "Young lady, don't try to agitate me." She felt the man's breath spraying down. Yi Qingluo knitted her brows in disgust as she sneered. "Not a loss? I'm merely a nobody, and you. If you die, all your glory will vanish into thin air. Moreover, you, revered Lord in the world's gossip, will forever be my Ah Xian's defeated opponent." Perhaps it was her last sentence which agitated revered Lord. Revered Lord's expression suddenly turned steely green. His hand suddenly clasped tightly onto her slender shoulder. His fingers seemed as though he was going to break her bones. It was so painful that Yi Qing Luo's face turned pale as sweat started to form on her forehead. "What a sharp tongue, lass!" Revered Lord's other hand locked onto her chin. "I really want to teach this mouth of yours a lesson." Yi Qing Luo was in pain from being pinched, but her eyes were still filled with ridicule. "Just make your move. Let's see if your speed is faster or Ah Xian's speed is faster." Revered Lord's steely green face instantly turned into a gloomy cloud. He fiercely shook Yi Qing Luo's chin away, not even wanting to say a word to her. His face turned black as he looked at DMO Xian as he spoke sinisterly. "The woman you find is the same as you. Disgusting." As he spoke, his rather handsome face contorted into a deformed expression. "Dizun, have you thought it through? Do you want to save your face and lose the woman you love? Or do you want to kneel in front of me for the woman you love?" DMO Xian's gaze had always been on Yi Qing Luo's. That pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes seemed to contain infinite tenderness. Yi Qing Luo saw the meaning in his eyes, and her expression changed slightly. "Ah Xian, I don't allow you to do this. Even if you do it, he won't let me go." DMO Xian curled his thin lips at her, as if he was comforting her. Then, when he raised his eyes to look at the dark prime, his entire aura underwent a complete change. His gaze was awe-inspiring and his aura was terrifying. Word by word, he spat out from his lips. "If you keep your word, I will agree to your request." Ha! Ha ha ha! When Nether Prime heard this answer, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. He looked at DMO Xian as though he was looking at an idiot. "Do you know, if a strong practitioner has a soft spot, what's the consequence?" His voice was filled with complacency. "Now, I'll tell you what's the consequence." Nether Prime laughed sinisterly as he leapt up, charging towards DMO Xian. Chapter 3776. DMO Xian was just about to make his move. Yu Zun's complacent voice rang out, "Don't try to resist. If this palm doesn't land on you, then your beloved woman will bear it for you." DMO Xian's figure was completely rooted to the ground. Dark venerable. Yi Qing Luo's pupils constricted as she gritted her teeth and roared out Yu Zun's name. "Ah Xian, don't bother about me. I want to see if he really dares to make a move against me." She bet that he wouldn't dare. Once he made a move, DMO Xian would not hesitate to make his move. The Nether Prime could at most only use her to delay the time of this battle. But, bang, that palm landed squarely on DMO Xian's shoulder. DMO Xian was forced to retreat several steps. When he regained his balance, the corner of his lips was slightly pale, and a trace of blood flowed out. That shade of red pierced Yi Qing Luo's eyes. That palm landed on DMO Xian's body. It was like a blow to her heart. His heart felt like it was being torn apart. A surge of blood, qi, kept surging in his chest, as if it would gush out from his throat at any moment. It was all because of her. It was all because of her. That was why DMO Xian was controlled by others. He already had a foolproof plan in his mind. She was almost 80% sure that the Dark Lord wouldn't dare to make a move against her. But DMO Xian cared about her. Because he cared, he dared not gamble with her. Therefore, he would rather bear this palm, strike himself. Ah Xian. Looking at DMO Xian, who was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, Yi Qing Luo's voice was choked. She looked at DMO Xian. Tears welled up in his eyes, the blood that was surging in his chest. It made her throat feel fishy and sweet. Ah Xian, ah Xian, ah Xian. She had clearly instructed him not to let himself get hurt for her sake. But now it was for her. He endured the Dark Lord's humiliation. Her Ah Xian. How could he allow others to humiliate him? DMO Xian smirked at her. His smile was very faint. However, the gentleness and love in his eyes were still as deep as ever. This smile made Yi Qingluo's eyelashes wet with a layer of mist. Her drooping black hair covered her eyes, which were gradually turning red. The aura on his body was also gradually changing. It was a very subtle change. Ha ha ha, Diamo Xian. This is the price to pay for having a soft spot. Yu Zun laughed in satisfaction. Looking at Diamo Xian's swaying body, he felt extremely carefree in his heart. His heart was filled with the satisfaction of injuring and humiliating Diamo Xian. He didn't notice the changes that were happening to the woman he was holding. To be more precise, to Yu Zun, this woman was an ant that he could strangle to death with a flick of his finger. He did not care about her at all. So why would he pay attention to her changes? This woman is really important to you. It was not in vain that I spent so much effort to pull her into the space of your consciousness. Ha ha ha, Diamo Xian. There's more exciting things waiting for you next. Yu Venerable raised his palm. A majestic and tyrannical profound energy, like a hurricane whirlpool, surged in his palm, along with the Nether Prime's wild laughter. The hurricane grew fiercer and fiercer. The aura of the entire space changed. The hurricane rose abruptly, and the vast starry sky in the space seemed to be swept along with the hurricane. This palm, his target, was Diamo Xian's chest. As long as this palm landed, if Diamo Xian didn't die, he would be crippled. When Diamo Xian had no way to retaliate, he would torture Yi Qingluo bit by bit in front of Diamo Xian. Chapter 3777. In his mind, it was as though he had already sketched out a beautiful picture of the future. Revered Lord gave a sinister smile as his eyes were filled with complacency and murderous intent. That palm was aimed directly at Diamo Xian's chest as it chopped downwards. Diamo Xian's expression changed slightly. When that palm landed, his muscles tensed up. He naturally could tell what Revered Lord was planning. Revered Lord's palm was aimed at the weakest part of his body. As long as he received this palm, his 5 viscera and 6 bowels would probably be severely injured. Earlier, when he was in the spirit devouring array, the injuries to his soul would probably be dragged out. By then, Diamo Xian's eyes turned colder and colder. His brain was working quickly. His injuries were nothing. But if he lost his battle power, Revered Lord would absolutely not keep his promise. He must ensure Lil Luo's safety before he was heavily injured. The violent and ferocious palm, filled with murderous intent, was already pressing downwards. A glint flashed past Diamo Xian's eyes. He didn't evade this palm. Instead, he faced this palm and stretched out his hand towards the direction where Revered Lord was holding on to Yi Qingluo. Revered Lord was shocked by Diamo Xian's sudden action. Was he crazy? He was prepared to use his own body to forcefully snatch Yi Qingluo from his hands. Revered Lord couldn't understand Diamo Xian's actions. The palm had already landed. If he stuffed Yi Qingluo behind him and avoided Diamo Xian's outstretched hand, that palm which he struck out would definitely be deflected. If this palm was deflected, he would lose control of Diamo Xian. That would give Diamo Xian a chance to turn things around. He couldn't avoid it. Revered Lord's gaze was sinister as his murderous aura intensified. What an infatuated person! I'll fulfill your wish. He wanted to see how Diamo Xian was going to protect Yi Qingluo after being hit by this palm. Everything would proceed according to his plans. The murderous aura in Revered Lord's eyes became more and more intense. His palm was like a hot knife cutting through butter, and his profound energy was like a surging flood. Even the air was intimidated by this energy, and there were traces of electric currents flickering in the air. Boom! A huge explosion reverberated through the entire space. Ah! It was accompanied by a shrill scream. But this miserable shriek was not Diamo Xian's voice. Instead, the Nether Prime's face was pale, beads of cold sweat the size of beans rolling down from his forehead. The intense pain eroded his body and mind. It was as if something was rampaging in his body. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels, and even all the bones in his body were smashed to pieces. He opened his mouth in pain and howled miserably. His widened eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. What was going on? Why was everything not going in the direction he had envisioned? Yuzun twisted his head in pain. The tearing pain made him break out in cold sweat. His gaze slowly landed on the source of the pain. His hand was still maintaining the motion of swinging his palm downwards. It was just a finger's distance away from Dmo Xian, but he couldn't swing that palm down for a long time. This was because a slender white hand had grabbed his wrist. All of his strength was locked in that small, slender white hand. He wanted to move. However, he was suppressed by that small hand and was unable to move at all. From the strength of that small hand which was gripping his wrist, wave after wave of berserk, profound energy followed his wrist and rushed into his body, like a sharp blade. Chapter 3778. But what shocked him the most was this slender hand actually belonged to that woman whom he totally disregarded and treated as a hostage. Yiqing Luo. When did she break free from his restraint? And when did she clasp his wrist? He totally didn't feel anything at all. He only knew that at the moment when his palm was about to land on Dmo Xian's chest, turning him into a cripple completely, his wrist was already clasped by Yiqing Luo. Immediately following that, a violent surge of profound energy pressed against his internal organs, and there was a sharp blade cutting his heart. Traces of profound energy probing towards his profound jade heart. And he totally had no room to resist at all. This was impossible. How could she possibly have such a powerful energy? If there was such a powerful energy, how could he possibly not sense it? Could it be Dmo Xian's doing? Yu Zun, who was in extreme pain, stared fiercely at Dmo Xian. But he saw Dmo Xian's expression was slightly stunned as his brows creased tightly, looking at Yiqing Luo in bewilderment, as though he was shocked by the energy that Yiqing Luo had unleashed. "My man, you dare to touch him?" The young lady's cold voice seemed to be covered with frost. A pair of blood-red eyes surged with ice-cold, monstrous waves. Her 5 fingers suddenly tightened. "It's this hand that injured my man." A "Kacha" sound was heard. Yu Zun's right hand was broken by Yiqing Luo barehandedly. Yiqing Luo raised her leg and kicked Yu Zun's chest fiercely. Yu Zun flew backwards, falling under the vast starry sky. He cried out in pain, hugging his broken arm as he rolled around. Blood kept seeping out, dyeing his robe red. The young lady stood in the air. Her flamboyant red robe was like a dazzling poppy, flamboyant and eye-catching. The strong wind danced wildly, blowing against her fine black hair. The young lady's face was devastatingly beautiful. Her brows were sharp and stern. Her enchanting eyes were filled with the world's coldest ice, as though it was just a glance. Then it would be frozen into frost. Flamboyant, peerlessly beautiful. Lil Luo. Dmo Xian stared intently at Yiqing Luo as his peach blossom eyes sparkled. The girl in front of him, just like his little Luo. However, there seemed to be something different. It was a breathtaking aura. Even he felt a trace of pressure. Perhaps it hurt his voice. The girl slowly glanced over. At this moment, her beautiful face, which could topple cities, seemed to melt like snow. Her long and narrow eyes, which were dyed red, seemed to be dotted with a myriad of spring waters, like peach blossoms. She smiled at him. Her smile was beautiful and captivating. Her red eyes were enchanting and charming. Dmo Xian's brows gradually softened. This was his little Luo, no matter what her current situation was. However, her soul was still Lil Luo. You did it on purpose. You did it on purpose. The Nether Prime's voice broke the sweetness between the two of them. He staggered to his feet. He was in an extremely sorry state. He stared deadly at Yi Qing Luo, as though he wanted to slice her into 1,000 pieces. Yi Qing Luo's gaze shifted back onto Yuzun. The coldness and contempt in his eyes were extremely clear, as though he was mocking Yuzun for overestimating his own ability. She leapt upwards. The fiery red long robe was like a raging fire, blossoming brilliantly in the sky, weaving streaks of colorful clouds. A majestic aura, as though it could stir the 9 heavens, burst forth from her body, so powerful it. Chapter 3779. Yu Venerable's pupils constricted as disbelief and fear surged beneath his eyes. You're not Yi Qing Luo! Oh! The young lady's pink lips curled slightly as she breathed out a light breath from her nose. Under those cold, sharp, charming eyes, her gaze was cold, noble, and breathtaking. Even Yu Venerable, who was used to killing. When he met the sharp, cold, and frost-like eyes, he felt a chill run down his spine. His throat couldn't help but tighten as his heart felt as though it was being strangled tightly by something. Yu Venerable's heart thumped hard. His heart kept sinking. What was going on? The young lady in front of him still looked the same, but her entire person had undergone an earth-shattering change. If it was in the past, when he looked at Yi Qing Luo, he only felt that this young lady had a peerless beauty, but her ability was meager. As long as he moved his finger, he would be able to pull her in easily. But now, the aura that Yi Qing Luo released and the boundless profound energy that she was emitting. All these showed her extraordinariness, especially in front of the young lady's chest. There seemed to be a ball of blazing flame. The enchanting red glow pierced Yu Venerable's eyes, even though he couldn't see clearly the thing under the flame. Yu Venerable was very clear. That was the young lady's profound jade heart, which was releasing its power. It could be said, the current Yi Qing Luo. She was totally a strong existence who was on par with him, or even Dmo Xian. He had actually misjudged her. This young lady had concealed herself too well. Yu Venerable. The young lady's clear voice was like an orchid in an empty valley, extremely pleasing to the ears. But that voice was mixed with a chilly intent, making one feel a chill down one's spine. Yu Venerable's heart thumped fiercely again. His heart felt as though it was going to jump out from his throat. He clenched his teeth tightly as he suppressed the heavy pressure in his heart. His vicious eyes stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. 1Dmo Xian. He had already suffered a lot. Moreover, he had long heard that Dmo Xian was injured and his ability was not even half of his peak. He thought that he could take advantage of the situation to stop Dmo Xian, to seek back all the humiliation that he had suffered from Dmo Xian. But he had not expected that even the injured Dmo Xian. He was also not Dmo Xian's opponent. Now, with the addition of Yi Qing Luo, who he couldn't see through at all. If he didn't seize the opportunity to kill one of them, he would definitely die. Today he was most likely doomed. The murderous intent in the Nether Prime's eyes instantly surged intensely. All the dark force in his body was entangled crazily. However, in the face of Lord Yu's vigilance, Yi Qing Luo, who had made up her mind to go all out, didn't even bat an eyelid. Her long and narrow eyes were overflowing with light, like the twinkling of stars. His eyes were filled with calmness and indifference. He was neither happy nor angry, neither arrogant nor rash. He was emotionless. She said, "There's no need to look at Xiao Xian. I can deal with you alone." She smiled sweetly, and her smile was incomparably beautiful. However, there was not a trace of warmth in the depths of her eyes. She lifted her fair and slender hand slowly. A streak of lightning-like, flowing light danced in her palm. From time to time, there would be crackling sounds. When Yu Zun's vision came into contact with the electric current running around in Yi Qing Luo's palm, he staggered back a few steps, as if he had been frightened. Thunder, thunderclap, incantation. This power. Don't tell me you are. His face alternated between pale white and steely green. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Chapter 3780. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose slightly as she smiled sweetly. Oh, so you know what this is. Her 5 fingers moved slightly. The flickering electric current started to move faster and faster. The electric current crackled as though it was dipped in poison, icy cold and sinister. She slowly raised her hand. The electric ball in her hand covered the smile on her face, but it couldn't conceal the cold, teasing glint in her eyes. Only a dead person can keep a secret, then. I can only kill you. Her tone was indifferent, carrying an irresistible dignity. The murderous intent in her words made Yu Zun awaken from his stupor. He pursed his lips tightly as his twisted face was half unwillingness and half astonishment. Suddenly, he pounced towards Yi Qing Luo. Monstrous, profound energy gathered around his body. That right hand, which was broken by Yi Qing Luo, suddenly stretched out towards her. A black airflow revolved around his broken arm. A piece of white bone suddenly popped out from the broken arm. The tip of the bone was extremely sharp, like a sharp blade, giving off a faint cold glint. On the white bone, there was a sinister qi revolving around it. Yi Qing Luo, stop acting mysterious. I'd like to see what kind of waves an ant like you can stir up. Yu Zun gritted his teeth as he gave a low growl. He didn't believe that Yi Qing Luo had suddenly undergone such a huge change. An ant was an ant. How could he possibly die in the hands of an ant? Lil Luo. Although Dmo Xian knew about Yi Qing Luo's current condition, he didn't need to worry. But when he saw Yu Zun's attack nearing, his body's instincts had already driven him to fly towards Yi Qing Luo. His long arms stretched out as he pulled the young lady into his embrace. With a backhand, he struck out a palm in an attempt to block Yu Zun's attack. But before he could even raise his hand, the girl's soft little hand had already rested on his arm, and she slowly pressed his hand down. Tightly, the young lady's one hand encircled his waist. The other hand, which was holding the electric ball, moved slightly. The electric ball in her hand turned into a bolt of lightning as it smashed down from Yu Zun's head. The electric current revolved around Yu Zun's body. Lightning flashed, emitting sizzling sounds. Oh! The electric current wrapped around the dark prime, causing his entire body to be numb and charred. He fell to the ground, his limbs twitching. The electric current on his body was still faintly visible. Nobody appreciated the Nether Prime's miserable state. After throwing the electric ball, the young girl had already turned her head, a sweet smile hanging on the corner of her mouth. Her pair of charming eyes were also filled with warmth. She wrapped one arm around the man's waist. After throwing the electric ball, she retracted her other hand and placed it on the man's chest. She lifted her eyes and met his gaze. In her star-like eyes, it was as if a pool of spring water had been disturbed, overflowing with youth, enchanting and seductive. My man, you should rest after being injured. The girl's clear and sweet voice was as gentle as water. Suddenly, she wrapped her arms around his neck. She carefully avoided his injured shoulder. Their breaths were very close. The young lady's clear and hoarse voice was filled with a faint smile. You've protected me for so long. As my man, you should also enjoy the feeling of being protected by me. Dmo Xian's pupils reflected the young lady's devastatingly beautiful looks. Seeing that he didn't speak, Yi Qing Luo's gentle smile became even more obvious. She tipped her toes, and her moist pink lips imprinted on the man's lips. A very light touch. She pulled the distance between their lips. Then she said, "Be good, listen to me.